of cows.
I need it! I need it! Let's go! Gah!
Welcome to TYT, I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. We've got a lot of stories for you today. We've got a lot of big ones, got a lot of little ones. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to start off by drawing attention to someone who dishonestly covered both Cenk and I in a Mediaite article, if you wanna call it that. We'll get to that in a minute. But I also wanted to kind of discuss something that I'm pretty sure those on the left are not as privy to, which is some new information that has come out as a result of independent media investigating Thomas Matthew Crooks. That was Trump's first would-be assassin. Kind of strange how this young man attempted to assassinate a presidential candidate and then the American people kind of just stopped hearing anything about it. So what's going on with that? We'll dive into the latest on it. There are now multiple journalists who have basically dug pretty deep into the various lies that have been told to the American public about, by the FBI about his online profiles, what his political views were, just some interesting stuff to get into there. We'll talk about terrorism in the West Bank, and when I say terrorism, I'm specifically referring to settler violence against Palestinian civilians who have been killed, maimed, driven out of their homes. It appears that Israel at least wants to provide the illusion of punishment for some of these people. We'll get into whether or not that punishment is real. Lots to get to, and then in the second hour, Cenk will join me to also cover the news in addition to respond to this, insane Mediaite thing that came out today. So without further ado, why don't we actually jump into the Mediaite slander that I'm referring to. It was written by a guy by the name of Isaac Shore. So let's get into it. Isaac Shore, who happens to be one of these writers over at a website known as Mediaite, and happens to think that every war crime committed by Israel is actually Hamas's fault, decided to attack both me and Cenk Uygur in a pretty pathetic attempt at a hit job. Now, I appreciated the commenters on that article because it seems like the jig is up and people know that this was incredibly dishonest. But I kind of want to go through the various elements of this article where I'm being addressed and the claims that are being made about me. Cenk will join us in a little bit to address the lies that are told about him. But let's start with this. So his first line of attack, Isaac Shore's first line of attack against me had to do with my appearance on Tucker Carlson's show. So before I give you what he had to say about that, I just want to send a message out into the ether. I just want everyone to be fully aware about where I stand on the topic of having conversations with people across the political aisle. I'm going to have the conversations. I'm gonna have the conversations whenever I want, however I want, and no one is gonna tell me what I can and can't do. I don't care if you're on the left, I don't care if you're on the right, I don't care if you're my mother or father. I'm a 39-year-old woman who has operated in the context of news media for nearly 20 years. And I'm gonna have a conversation with whoever I damn well please. That's number one. Now, here's what he has to say about my appearance on Tucker Carlson's show recently. This was, I believe, last week. Anna Kasparian has demonstrated a willingness to pal around with the far right. Carlson recently released a nearly 2-hour denunciation of two Jewish American commentators, Ben Shapiro and Fox News's Mark Levin. So whatever you might think about Tucker Carlson's political label, far right, conservative, whatever it is, he and I have agreements on US foreign policy. I'm not gonna apologize for that because I've held these views on US foreign policy. I have had a disdain toward neocons and neoconservatism ever since I became politicized in high school. My political views on foreign policy have not changed. Tucker Carlson's have changed, and in fact, he has been incredibly remorseful about the fact that he went along with the big lie regarding Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. I mean, on a regular basis, if you actually care to listen to what he has to say on his own program, he admits I was wrong. And there's something admirable about that. That doesn't happen often in partisan media. So he'll have me on to opine or comment or discuss issues in which he and I have an agreement. That's a good thing, and I'm never gonna apologize for that. Now, with that in mind, when you look at this line of attack from Isaac Shore, this is worded in a way that would make you think that Tucker Carlson and I got together to attack Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin specifically because they're Jewish, when no such thing happened whatsoever. Isaac Shore does something that many in corporate media tend to do, which is omit relevant contextual details about the discussion that Tucker Carlson and I were having. So for instance, he omitted the fact that the criticism toward Ben Shapiro specifically, in regard to when I was involved in the conversation, had nothing to do with him being Jewish. Okay, so Shapiro has been attempting to cancel Tucker Carlson over his interview of Nick Fuentes. He is demanding that everyone denounce various right-wing figures who are critical of Israel. He recently did that in the flesh on Megyn Kelly's own tour and lied to Megyn Kelly to her face about what Candace Owens had said about the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation in order to get Megyn Kelly to denounce Candace Owens based on a false premise. There was also the fact that, well, Ben Shapiro went viral fairly recently because he claims that you don't have the right, you are not entitled to continue living in the same neighborhood or community you grew up in. And if housing is unaffordable, well, it's kind of your problem. Move somewhere else. That's what I was commenting on when I was on Tucker Carlson's show. I wasn't commenting on Ben Shapiro's identity because quite frankly, I don't care about Ben Shapiro's religion or his ethnic identity. All of that is entirely irrelevant to me. What's relevant to me is the content of someone's character and what they're saying. And I wholeheartedly disagree with Ben Shapiro when he says that Americans should not feel entitled to remaining in the same communities they grew up in. You know, the communities where their friends and family might be in, the community that they have roots in. In fact, why don't I give you a little taste of what Tucker Carlson and I were actually saying about Ben Shapiro?
But I don't think that we should tell people that they have no right to live in the town where they were born. Like, okay, so who are we serving here? What is the point of this exercise? To maximize profits to you? Like what? I don't know, like what is that?
Well, the first thing I thought of as I listened to Ben Shapiro make that argument was, oh, so I shouldn't have the ability to stay close to my family?
Yeah, exactly.
Like think about what ties you to the community you live in, right? The community you grew up in. It's your family, it's your friends, it's your job. A lot of people aren't able to work remotely. And part of the reason why it's so expensive to live in, some of these cities or the most expensive parts of this country is because whether we like it or not, a lot of the jobs are concentrated there. So Isaac Shore, what's your problem with what I said there? And why did you write a disgusting hit piece making it appear as though Tucker and I were talking about Ben Shapiro's Jewishness as opposed to what Ben Shapiro argued in terms of housing affordability? What a dishonest prick Isaac Shore happens to be. Because here's the thing, when you don't actually have an argument, when you're unable to dismantle merited critique of a foreign country like Israel, well, then all you do is smear, slander, misinterpret intentionally, right? Engage in ad hominem attacks. Pathetic. Now, as for Mark Levin, prior to getting to my portion of Tucker's show where he interviewed me, he had an hour-long monologue where the whole point was to communicate to his audience that you absolutely have to do what is necessary to avoid believing in collective punishment. Okay, the whole point was don't become the thing that you hate. Don't become Mark Levin. And now, what did he mean by that? Well, Mark Levin is a disgusting, hateful, bigot, and Islamophobe. Now, in America, apparently you can hate on Muslims all you want, and you don't get attacked as viciously as people like Tucker Carlson have been attacked for being critical of a foreign nation state. But make no mistake about it, for literally decades, Mark Levin has been a grotesque member of the media who has spewed all sorts of hatred. And the whole point of Tucker Carlson's hour-long monologue was to say to his audience, don't turn into this. Judge people as individuals, not as a group. We don't believe in blood guilt. And he comes from a Christian perspective on that. I grew up in the Christian religion. Maybe that had a huge influence on how I believe as well. But let me just say this. I do not blame the entire Jewish population for the war crimes that are committed by the Israeli government, because I'm not an idiot. I can tell the difference between the two. And I judge people as individuals, not as an entire group. I don't believe in blood guilt. But that's not the case for Mark Levin. So let me give you a little taste of who he is, and then ask yourselves, why is it that Isaac Shore didn't feel the need to even mention how hateful Mark Levin is? Why isn't he writing pieces about how hateful Mark Levin is? Instead, he attacks people like me and Tucker Carlson for finding Mark Levin to be a deplorable, disgusting, Islamophobic, hateful bigot. Take a look.
That's not a warmonger, that's a peacemaker. That is a man who's gonna make sure this generation and future generations are protected from nuclear missiles coming out of the Middle East, from barbarian primitives from the 7th century.
And I'm supposed to, what? Shed crocodile tears for what's going to happen to these people? I'm not. Israel has every right to throw every damn thing it has at barbarians. And if there are innocent people, quote unquote, civilians who are killed, then maybe they ought to organize to take out the government they elected.
The media have been very ambiguous, confounded, and confusing about making distinctions between Hamas and the Palestinians. Hamas is Palestinian. Hamas was elected as a terrorist organization of terrorist Palestinians in Gaza.
So just to be clear here, Isaac Shore came to the defense of that disgusting, grotesque pig you saw on screen, and decided to come after me and Tucker Carlson for having a problem with the type of culture Mark Levin is trying to instill in this country, which is a culture in which we believe in collectivist, hatred or criminality or guilt. I mean, Hamas, Palestinian civilian, what's the difference? Am I right? Do you think you could spare a word or two in your little piece, Isaac Shore, about the hateful commentary that Americans have been consuming from a grotesque pig like Mark Levin for years? No, you can't? Okay. Well, we know what's actually motivating you here. And then I'm gonna end on this. There's a woman on X. She shows up on my feed all the time. I sometimes see stuff from her that I think is not right. But for the most part, she pops up on my feed. I don't know why X makes her pop up on my feed. I hadn't been following her. But I noticed that she got attacked just a few days ago by that gross Stop Antisemitism account that has literally labeled anyone who's ever been critical of Israel even a little bit an anti-Semite. And I don't know why, but they are on a complete mission right now to essentially destroy this woman's life. And to be fair, after looking at her account, yeah, she's said things about Jewish people I wholeheartedly disagree with. That is separate from my interaction with her just a few days ago, which really had to do with the fact that she was being attacked specifically because she struggled with drug addiction. So let's get to the details. Here's what Isaac Shore had written. Kasparian recently came to the defense of virulent anti-Semite Lauren Witzke. Now, he described my defense of Witzke, but didn't include a link to it in the piece, which I think is telling. Didn't provide any context in regard to like what I was defending her on. Because adding a link, by the way, would show exactly how and why I defended her. And I think if you are a person with a heart, if you are a person who has seen loved ones struggle with addiction, if you, like me, had the traumatic experience of witnessing someone who had died of a drug overdose at your front step just a few years ago, you understand the gravity of drug addiction in this country and how many lives have been lost and how many families have been torn apart as a result of it. So when I come across someone who has really made an effort and is in recovery, I want to support them. Okay, I'm able to compartmentalize a little bit. I might disagree with her wholeheartedly on everything. But when I see a human being attacked for her past, which could lead her to relapse, I want to show a little bit of support. So I literally replied to something that she wrote on X. I don't regret it for a second, but it was a reply. It wasn't a quote tweet or anything. So this weird little creep, Isaac Shore, is apparently poring over my social media account to see what I'm replying to make a national case about how I'm supposedly supporting an anti-Semite. All right, so let's take a look at what I had responded to. This was her post, Lauren Witzke's post. She's quote tweeting "Stop Antisemitism," which included a mugshot from when she unfortunately was addicted to drugs. She says, in the last 24 hours, the Zionists and their paid shills have been maliciously attacking me in an obviously organized smear campaign for my past, so I want to use this opportunity to share my testimony. I struggled with addiction all through my 20s with pills, and then she shares her story of recovery. It's a lengthy post, which I encourage you to read. I wanna show you how I responded to it. I wrote, don't allow these pieces of crap, although I used a different word, to get to you. They live off our resources, and yes, I'm talking about Israel, the welfare state that we keep funneling our money to. They live off our resources and have the audacity to insult us. You should feel extremely proud for overcoming addiction. Here's how Isaac Shore wrote about it though. It's telling. Don't allow these pieces of crap to get to you. They live off our resources and have the audacity to insult us, mused Kasparian after Stop Antisemitism in an admittedly uncouth fashion called out Witzke for claiming to have had a Jewish best friend who betrayed her. Oh, no mention of the addiction and recovery and how Stop Antisemitism is using her past as a way of attacking her, even though she's currently in recovery. No comment on that, Isaac? Fascinating. I'm sure your readers would really like to know how much you are misleading them in your little hit piece here. You either have an argument that dismantles my critique of Israel or you don't. And obviously, based on this, you don't. So you're just gonna smear people, make things up about them, mislead people, omit important contextual details to make it seem like they're rabid anti-Semites. And let me just be clear. Look, I don't hide anything. I'm an open book. I think it's pretty clear now. I admit everything. I don't like Israel as an ally to the United States. I don't. I think Israel is committing war crimes, atrocities, all sorts of disgusting behavior by this Israeli government and its military that should be condemned. And I can get into details about that. I can cite statistics about that. I can talk about the fact that the IDF's own data indicates that 83%, at least 83% of the people they've slaughtered in Gaza happen to be Palestinian civilians, not Hamas militants. Now, if you want to silence someone like me, One way to do it is to dismantle the arguments I'm making, but you can't defend the indefensible, can you, Isaac? So instead, you just try to destroy my character and my reputation. But again, the jig is up. People have wisened up to the reality of this situation. So these smear attempts aren't gonna work because I'm on the record making abundantly clear who I am, what I believe, how much I reject hatred of all forms, how much I refuse to believe in so-called blood guilt. And your little smear attacks are only gonna make the situation worse for the side you're trying to represent here. So that's all I have to say about this. Cenk will be joining us for the second hour to address the lies that were told about him. For now, let's take a break. When we come back, I'm gonna give Tucker Carlson props for how he covered a pretty explosive story that sheds new light on Trump's would-be assassin, Thomas Matthew Crooks. We'll be right back.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to our first social break of the day. It's amazing. I have been working in media now for nearly 2 decades, right? And claims of me being an anti-Semite never came up, not even once, until I started being critical of Israel. Interesting. And obviously it's because I'm not an anti-Semite, and I do not blame the entire Jewish population for the crimes committed by a single Israeli government and its military. Camp Cronadad says, Anna doesn't care about Ben Shapiro's goddamn religion. I don't care about anybody's religion. What I care about is, am I dealing with a good person or a bad person? Or more importantly, especially when I'm commenting on someone like Ben Shapiro, I'm commenting on the arguments he's making. So Zionism is an ideology. It is not an immutable identity or characteristic. Let's be clear about that. Stiff Upper Lib says, on the whole, I do think it's best that any criticism that comes toward TYT is best if they don't mention it or make a quick remark about it, or no, I'm gonna dismantle it. Because that was one of the most dishonest pieces I've ever seen in my life. And no, the truth needs to be out there. So if I just sit back and let members of the media misrepresent who I am, misrepresent my character, misrepresent what I actually believe, well, that lie will fester. And it'll evolve into something even worse, or devolve into something even worse. So no, I have to address it. It's one thing if it's a rando on X. It's another thing if it's literally someone in the media who's publishing a dishonest piece about us. Funkin' for Fun says, my brain hurts. I spent too much time arguing with a Protestant who wouldn't accept that Catholics are actually Christians. Why does someone else's broken brain actually hurt my brain? I mean, I probably wouldn't have engaged in that debate in the first place. If people are wrong about their interpretation of religion, who cares? I don't really care. What I do care about though is when people engage in behavior that harms others, yet pretend like they're the ones who have the moral high ground. Mick writes in and says, listening to Lana Del Rey while prepping for TYT. What are you prepping for TYT? I wanna know what you're prepping. I'm the one who has to do the prepping for TYT along with my team. Harkin writes in and says, I'm sorry enough to absolve Caroline Levitt. I genuinely want to know where the line is. I have no idea what that's a reference to, so I'm just gonna leave that there. Let's go to, oh wow, this is a lengthy comment. I'll read it when we come back from the break because I'm probably gonna run out of time. Rage Rock for Now says, hey, Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Isaac Shore, etc. Keep on digging your own proverbial graves. Who in the right mind do you think you're fooling? Viva TYT, thank you, I appreciate that. Shannon says, the biggest Israel psyops was turning Americans against Muslims. Yeah, and by the way, Candace Owens admitted that, and she's probably getting backlash for that too. What's up, everyone? I want to read a quick comment before we move on to our next story. Thank you to Republican Android K, who says, I'm enraged at this Islamophobic filth exploding on X. Jake Lang, that unhinged psycho wrapping bacon around the Quran in Dearborn and screaming, get out of my country at American Muslims, absolute garbage. This is stochastic terrorism. Dearborn is one of the most patriotic cities in America, full of veterans and hardworking families who happen to be Muslim. Desecrating their holy book and yelling slurs isn't free speech. It's fascist it's basically trying to provoke fascism straight out of the 1930s Germany. And then there's Laura Loomer. So, all right, I'll read the comment, even though I try to not engage in this myself, although I'm flawed and sometimes do. That botched plastic surgery, jigsaw puzzle, face, hate goblin, retweeting and amplifying every second of it like the professional bigot she is. She should take her jigsaw puzzle face and sit this one out instead of amplifying dislike for Muslims. Enough is enough. This isn't edgy. This isn't patriotic. This is straight up Nazi cosplay targeting Muslim Americans. We see you, we're calling you out, and we're not letting this slide. Islamophobia is terrorism. Hands off vulnerable communities. I hate hatred of all kinds, right? So we live in a pluralistic society where we have people from all different backgrounds and like religious beliefs. We have to get to a point where we see each other. We have a shared identity as Americans where we respect and love each other as fellow Americans, but also respect the fact that we do have different backgrounds. We do have different faiths. And I don't think that that's a weakness in this country. I think that's what makes this country great. But I think what's been lacking in recent decades is that we've moved away from having a cohesive shared American identity, if you get what I mean. And as a result of that, there's this constant otherizing, which despite what Isaac Shore believes, I'm very much against, okay? I will protect and I will fight to protect Americans, people in this country, regardless of their faith, regardless of their background, because they're my fellow Americans. Like, that's the way I see it. So thank you for writing in. Thank you for the generous super chat. All right, let's move on to this story, which is now being covered by other news outlets as well. No one in legacy media, unfortunately, but we're finally starting to get a clearer picture of who Thomas Matthew Crooks, the would-be Trump assassin, happened to be.
These are videos the FBI has worked hard to make sure you haven't seen. They're from the Google Drive account of Thomas Crooks, the man who on July 13th, 2024, showed up at the Butler County, Pennsylvania fairgrounds and tried to assassinate the frontrunner, Donald Trump. That day, Thomas Crooks came within a quarter inch of destroying this country. And yet, a year and a half later, we still know almost nothing about him or why he did it. That's because, for some reason, the FBI, even the current FBI, doesn't want us to know.
Tucker Carlson and his team have uncovered some new information about Thomas Matthew Crooks, who he was, and what might have motivated his efforts in assassinating President Donald Trump, who at the time, of course, was a candidate. Now, luckily, he was unsuccessful in doing so, but there are still so many questions about this would-be assassin, and more importantly, why it is that it appears the FBI is withholding information from the public, even though there's no active investigation and there's certainly no trial, because the would-be assassin was shot and killed on the scene. Now, there has been radio silence from the intelligence community and the FBI in particular. So the evidence that Tucker Carlson's team produced seems to point to some sort of FBI cover-up. That might sound crazy, that might sound kooky, but once you get into this incredible video that Tucker Carlson put out, it really does shed light on how much is being withheld from the public and whether or not this is being investigated thoroughly, and it should be investigated thoroughly. So how did Tucker Carlson's team gain access to all the evidence that's displayed in this video? I think of it as more of a mini doc. Well, Tucker's team apparently received a tip from a source in late September. Now, since then, they had done everything they could to confirm that the information that was being shared with them was accurate, was real. So this source told Tucker's team that by using Thomas Crooks's phone number, which was published in documents obtained by America First Legal, he was able to gain access to Crooks's online accounts. So let's stop right there. The FBI told us, if you can remember, that Crooks didn't even really have much online activity. There was no trail online. And it turns out that's totally untrue. So phone numbers can be used to find more information on a subject through tools that are commonly used by private investigators. And so here's what Crooks's phone number led to in detail.
That phone number led our source to Thomas Crooks's primary email account, tmcrooks7@gmail.com. That in turn, he linked with more than a dozen other accounts. That list includes 2 foreign encrypted email accounts, AmericanGamer@gmx.com, a German website, and bcook@mailfence.com, a Belgian website. Crooks had a Snapchat, Tom_Crooks19, a Venmo account, Thomas-Crooks12, a PayPal account under the alias Rod Swanson, a Zelle registered as Thomas Crooks, as well as accounts on Discord, a Google Play account called Colossal Microwave, a Quizlet titled Thomas_Crooks, a chess.com with the same name, and 2 disabled Quora accounts under the handles Thomas Crooks8 and Thomas Crooks3. It turns out that Thomas Crooks was hardly an online ghost. He was active, and yet federal investigators lied and told us there was no trace of him online.
No trace of him online. A curious lie, super dishonest. Now, Tucker's team was also able to gather all the data from Crooks's deactivated YouTube account, and it was deactivated after the assassination attempt took place. And that included, by the way, his search history, his watch history, and more importantly, 737 public comments, which now shed light on his political views, which just flipped suddenly from one extreme to another. So buckle up, I'm about to take you on a little bit of a ride here. So Crooks's Google Drive is also linked to his YouTube account, which is how videos of Crooks were obtained by Tucker Carlson's team and used in this video. After verifying that the account that they were looking at was indeed that of Thomas Crooks, they found that he had swung from posting pro-Trump comments, sometimes pro-Trump comments that would advocate for violence on behalf of Trump, to suddenly anti-Trump comments and even considering violent acts against Donald Trump. So let's take a look at this next clip and then I'll give you more information.
They show a man who started out as a radical Trump supporter whose views on the president transformed, changed completely during COVID. The FBI lied about that fact and pretended that Crooks was a right-winger. At 11:35 p.m. on July 19th, 2019, in response to an MSNBC video, Crooks wrote, quote, Ilhan Omar and others are invaders and should honestly be killed and their dead bodies sent back. At 1:17 a.m. on July 20th, 2019, Crooks commented on a CNN video. He said Donald Trump was the literal definition of patriotism. 7 hours later, he commented on an MSNBC video. He wrote, I hope a quick, painful death to all the deplorable immigrants and anti-Trump congresswomen who don't deserve anything this country has given them. That evening on a separate MSNBC video, he wrote, quote, every one of the Trump-hating Democrats deserve to have their heads chopped off and put on stakes for the world to see what happens when you America. These sorts of comments continued for months and became increasingly violent.
And they did become increasingly violent. He also posted a comment on YouTube in which he said, "This is going to be blatantly racist, but I hope Trump has these people murdered." Other violent comments he posted on YouTube include, if any of the Democratic candidates win, they won't be in there for long because unlike the Dems, we have guns and lots of them. I mean, just horrific stuff. There's more. Let me give you another example. So 50 million Americans with AR-15s will make quick work of any blockades the government can put to protect the White House. And look, let's be clear. These comments did catch the attention of other people on YouTube. They were flagged by other YouTube users. So for instance, on September 30th of 2019, he wrote the following: "Most rioters don't bring assault rifles and body armor like we would, and we wouldn't be going to the streets, we'd be going to Washington." And then here's how the others responded, noticing that he keeps advocating for violence. One person says, "Law enforcement will thank you for grouping up and being so visible. It'll make your arrest so much simpler." Unfortunately, his arrest was not made simpler because he never was arrested and then attempted to assassinate a presidential candidate. Here's another example. Another person responded to Crooks saying, "You are on YouTube threatening to shoot government officials. I sure hope the FBI is monitoring social media for violent nutcases. Trump's cult is literally insane." So keep in mind that these pro-Trump comments, in which he's even advocating for violence on behalf of President Donald Trump, are taking place as late as late September 2019. By January 2020, a few months later, he swings in the complete opposite direction. Now remember, January of 2020, you start seeing some headlines about the coronavirus pandemic. It wasn't called a pandemic then, that's for sure. And the shutdowns hadn't happened until March of 2020. So look, you could make the argument that he was on the far right, super supportive of Trump, and then COVID happens, he sees how Trump handles COVID and he turns on Trump. You can make that argument, except that's not what happened here. He started posting anti-Trump comments in January of 2020, and those comments became increasingly unhinged, okay? So let's get to some of those views right now. So here's an example. Actually, you know what? Let's go to the next clip because Tucker Carlson will kind of set it up and then I'll give you other examples.
In early 2020, Crooks seemed to change radically. On January 23rd of that year, he referred to, quote, Trump's stupidity. He began to mock the concept of the deep state. He suggested it was a code word used by Trump supporters for, quote, anyone who disagrees with the right wing. Suddenly, he sounded like an MSNBC commentator. In February of 2020, he called out Trump supporters as, quote, too brainwashed to realize how dumb you are. I mean, literally, you guys sound like a cult at times. That same day, he called Trump and his supporters, quote, racist. It was an amazing transformation.
And later, he did attack the right wing for how they responded to COVID while chiding Tucker Carlson, by the way. Here's an example. And going to a Chinese New Year's party in America isn't putting you at risk for coronavirus because, believe it or not, viruses don't spread through race like Tucker Carlson probably told you. How did this guy go from being a hateful, racist bigot who wanted to see members of the squad murdered to now seemingly being a member of the left who is defending China as, people start calling coronavirus the China virus and all of that. And it all happened in a few short months. He swung from a pretty significant extreme to what can only be described as, well, at this point, kind of mainstream left-wing thought. By August of 2020, though, Crooks started to post YouTube comments that advocated for violence against the Trump government. So he wrote, in my opinion, the only way to fight the government is with terror or terrorism style attacks. Sneak a bomb into an essential building and set it off before anyone sees you. Track down any important people / politicians / military leaders, etc., and try to assassinate them. Any sort of head-to-head fight is suicide, and even ambush / surprise attacks likely aren't going to end well. So he went from advocating for violence on behalf of Donald Trump to now advocating for violence against Donald Trump. What happened? It's like a switch flipped, and I mean, there's no clarity in regard to like what led to this significant change in his political views. But more importantly, why are we learning about this from Tucker Carlson? Why aren't we learning about this from our own government officials, namely the FBI? It seems like they've just kind of shut this case and they've moved on. But we're talking about a guy who was driven to a point where he thought attempting to assassinate a presidential candidate made sense. And here's where things start to get pretty crazy, because on top of this, it looked like there was someone goading Crooks to commit acts of violence. Take a look.
At that point, a new character emerged into the conversation, a user named Willie Tepes, who started pressuring Crooks to commit violence. For example, quote, "If a gun and a badge is all that is needed, then authority obviously comes from the barrel of a gun. We have more guns than they do. There is no way we can avoid a war at this point, so you better just get used to the idea. We have nothing to lose and everything to win. And the alternative, a global police state, is unacceptable. Nothing in life is simple, but that is no argument against doing it." So who is this Willie Tepes? Unfortunately, we don't know. The FBI hasn't made any mention of him in public, although they certainly know he exists. Just days after the shooting, somebody screenshotted Tepes' YouTube account page, despite the fact he had very few followers. To the extent that he can be traced online now, you can find his username being used on a foreign Antifa website. Those sites link him to the Nordic Resistance Movement, which has been designated a terrorist group by the US State Department. That's all we know.
So is the FBI investigating that? Like who is that Willie Tepes guy? And why was this individual essentially encouraging Thomas Matthew Crooks to engage in political violence? I mean, these are questions that need to be answered for sure. And Crooks's online footprint, strangely and abruptly, ended after his encounter with this Tepes guy. So here's the other thing. You have all of these violent comments posted by a single individual all over these YouTube videos. We keep hearing about how we all need to be surveilled at all times to make sure we're all on our best behavior. When you have this guy openly posting, with his own name, by the way, all sorts of violent comments, and our intelligence community couldn't foil an assassination attempt? Isn't that weird? I find that super weird. So for all the Americans out there who might be, I don't know, fooled into thinking that your security and your safety is dependent on allowing Peter Thiel or Larry Ellison to surveil your every waking moment, consider the fact that even when there's threats of political violence in broad daylight, our intelligence community apparently does nothing about it, doesn't investigate it, doesn't look into it. And more importantly, after an assassination attempt has been committed, we just don't hear about the would-be assassin anymore. We hear, little bits and pieces about what his politics might have been. But here you have a clear picture of someone who went from one extreme to all of a sudden going to the complete other opposite extreme. And by the way, his search history from 2019 to mid-2020 is also telling. So he searched for Trump 700 times. Jack Ruby, the guy who assassinated Lee Harvey Oswald, searched for him as well. He also searched craziest chemical weapons, cars running over protesters, best places for mass shootings, mass shooting El Paso, Trump civil war, Orlando shooting reaction, firing an AR-15 as fast as possible, how to make napalm, how to make Molotov cocktail, Oklahoma bombing, Hitler's speeches with subtitles, neo-Nazis, why gays need to go. I mean, it paints a picture of someone who has fallen into a dangerous mindset and ideology, whatever the ideology is. But again, the FBI is behaving in an incredibly strange way. And Kash Patel in particular has said some things on the record that I want to draw attention to. So 10 days after the assassination attempt, it turns out the FBI released Crooks's body to be cremated, which, kind of prevents further investigation from happening. So we learned about this on August 5th, apparently, due to Congressman and former police officer Clay Higgins from Louisiana going to Butler because he's like, what is going on here? I want to look into this for myself. That was when he learned, it turns out 10 days after the assassination attempt, the FBI sent Crooks's body for cremation. Now, the day that Crooks's body was cremated, this is also super interesting. The House Homeland Security and Oversight Committees had begun their own investigations into this assassination attempt. Could just be a coincidence. And this made it, again, impossible to verify certain things like the coroner and autopsy reports. So the FBI's activity at the scene itself also raises some questions. I didn't know about this. Let's take a look at what the FBI was up to.
Another notable detail is that photos from the day after the shooting show an FBI agent hosing down the site where Crooks died. High-level intelligence officials and congressional sources told us this is very strange, and that the FBI usually hires out crime scene cleanup to third-party contractors. But in this case, they did it themselves, leaving no blood and no tissue for anyone else to analyze. In the photo, the agent's shirt says he's from the Technical Hazards Response Unit, a unit that collects traditional forensic evidence contaminated with hazardous materials.
That is strange. That is strange. And I mean, by the way, the same thing happened at the university in which Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I mean, why would you be in such a hurry to clean the crime scene and essentially destroy any possible evidence that might be there? Including tissue, including blood, that kind of stuff. And you would think that we'd get more clarity from FBI Director Kash Patel, considering the fact that he's the FBI director who was chosen by President Donald Trump to serve in that role, and Trump was the target of this would-be assassin. But no, instead we've gotten bald-faced lies. Here's what I mean.
How come we don't have more information on the assassination attempts on President Trump?
There's two reasons, two open, ongoing prosecutions.
What a baffling thing to say. Thomas Crooks is dead, of course. There was no trial against Thomas Crooks. And by the way, they weren't misspeaking. This wasn't an accident. We know that because the director of the FBI said the same thing once again under oath in front of Congress in September.
I'd like to ask you, sir, and the FBI, under your leadership, would you please respond to these questions, and can you commit to doing that?
As soon as the trial's over.
What trial? Who's on trial? Thomas Matthew Crooks was killed on the scene. There is no trial. What is up with that lie? That is insane. So look, I'm not implying anything. I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know why the American people were kept in the dark. I don't know why President Donald Trump doesn't really seem motivated in getting more answers about this himself, considering the fact that he was the target of this assassination attempt. But what I do know is that when you don't have transparency and clarity from the very institutions that are supposed to be serving us, that's when conspiracy theories start to form, start to develop. So as much as people want to get angry at the so-called conspiracy theorists, can you really blame them when it really does appear that our institutions have been failing at their jobs and failing the American people? Look, for me, this isn't even a political thing. If Thomas Matthew Crooks had been successful that day, I don't know what would have happened in this country. It could have been a complete and utter disaster. And I'm very, very happy that he failed, but this latest reporting actually raises more questions. And the questions are directed specifically at the very government agency that is tasked with investigating this and returning real answers to the American people, including, by the way, the Trump administration, considering, again, Trump was the target of that assassination attempt. Anyway, really interesting stuff. I wanted to share that with you, but we gotta take a break. When we come back, lots of other news to get to. We'll see what we can fit in, but I definitely did want to kind of weigh in on one of the most unhinged statements that was made by a former Barack Obama speechwriter. We'll be right back. Oscar Savella writes in and asks a really good question, and I have a little bit more information to give you on this. Yeah, how the hell did he get so close to Trump to be able to almost assassinate him? That is a great question. It's addressed toward the end of the video that Tucker Carlson's team put out. But what was interesting is that, there were surveillance cameras that captured the roofs of in the area, right? There was only one exception though, and that was the roof that Thomas Matthew Crooks was able to climb onto and essentially shoot at the president from. So again, look, I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate. I think it's kind of irresponsible to speculate, and Tucker Carlson didn't speculate either. He is asking questions that are legitimate, merited questions. And to me, the biggest thing that stands out is Kash Patel basically telling us, yeah, I'm gonna give you more information once the trial is over. Oh, there is no trial, and obviously that's being used as an excuse to avoid giving the American people any information. The lack of transparency, I think, is really concerning here. Faye writes in and says, so many of these shooters are young and tend to be outcasts or mentally unstable. It makes me wonder how much our own government is really involved. Maybe even Israel. I want to be clear, there's no indication that Israel was involved in any of this, okay? So let's not even go there. But entrapment is a real thing, okay? And I am worried that maybe the Tepes guy goading him into carrying out political violence could be working for an intelligence agency, either our own, one of our own, or maybe from a foreign country. I have no idea. But we should have the type of FBI that's aggressively seeking answers about this. And by the way, online radicalization is a problem. So if that's at the heart of this issue, okay, give us clarity on that. Arcane Eclectic writes, Anna, go on Tucker's show again soon. You were one of the most popular guests he's ever had. I don't know if that's true, but thank you. All right, let me give you some more comments here. Republican Android K says, if America suddenly lost all 11 million undocumented immigrants, mostly workers, we'd have instant chaos. Farms shut. Actually, you're totally right about that. That's why the idea of mass deporting every single person who's in the country illegally would actually do a lot of harm to our country. But try having that debate. I mean, it gets heated pretty quickly. But yeah, farms would shut down. No one would build houses, no one to build houses. I wouldn't go that far, but a lot of our construction workers, yes, are undocumented. You're right about that. Restaurants and hotels would empty, food prices would double overnight, construction halts, GDP drops, $1 to $2 trillion a year. If all 45 million immigrants, legal plus undocumented, vanished, total economic apocalypse. By the way, I don't know if anyone on the right is arguing that legalized or naturalized American citizens should be denaturalized, but if they are, I don't see them as patriots. I actually see them as incredibly stupid and harmful. Hey, Sticky Feet writes in our super chat section. It says the anti-Semite thing is just a desperate attempt to shut people up. They want you to stop pointing out what's happening because it's indefensible. I think you're right about that. And honestly, the most tragic part of it is when you label everyone an anti-Semite, it makes it a lot harder to point out the actual anti-Semites because they exist. They certainly exist. But if you conflate criticism of a foreign country with hatred toward Jewish people, well, then you really muddy the waters and make it more difficult to identify individuals who actually do have hatred in their hearts toward Jewish people. So it's just so harmful, so stupid, and I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna continue being critical of Israel or any other foreign country, including, by the way, our own government, if I feel they're engaging in war crimes, illegal acts, or human rights abuses. So no one's gonna shut me up, let's just put it that way. All right, let's get to our next story.
So you have TikTok just smashing our young people's brains all day long with video of carnage in Gaza. And this is why so many of us can't have a sane conversation with younger Jews, because anything that we try to say to them, they are hearing it through this wall of carnage.
Carnage carried out by Israel against the Palestinian people should be dismissed, and that's according to, I can't even believe this, but maybe I should have been savvier. That's according to Sarah Hurwitz, who served as an aide and senior speechwriter, not to George W. Bush, not to some other war hawk, but to a left-wing war hawk, apparently, former President Barack Obama. So she made those comments at the Jewish Federations of North America, where she also mused that maybe Holocaust education in our public schools has backfired because it gave Americans, in her mind, the false impression that genocides and Holocausts were wrong when it happens to other people. Take a look.
I think, unfortunately, the very smart, bet that we made on Holocaust education to serve as anti-Semitism education, in this new media environment, I think that is beginning to break down a little bit. Because Holocaust education is absolutely essential, but I think it may be confusing some of our young people about anti-Semitism because they learn about big, strong Nazis hurting weak, emaciated Jews. And they think, oh, anti-Semitism is like anti-black racism, right? Powerful white people against powerless black people. So when on TikTok all day long they see powerful Israelis hurting weak, skinny Palestinians, it's not surprising that they think, oh, I know, the lesson of the Holocaust is you fight Israel. You fight the big, powerful people hurting the weak people.
She said that. She said that out loud at a public event with a live audience, with no shame. Holocaust is bad. Human rights abuses, war crimes, genocide, bad. Only when it happens to the Jews is like, what was that statement? What was that? I mean, the openness in making clear to everyone that everyone else is subhuman is pretty disgusting. Okay, luckily she received quite a bit of condemnation from other Jewish Americans, including Peter Beinart, the editor at large at Jewish Currents. And by the way, before I get to what he posted, I want to be very clear and I want my audience to understand. I know most of you already do, but in case there are a few of you who are watching this, that grotesque woman is not representative of all Jews, not even close. The fact that she was a senior speechwriter for President Barack Obama makes me sick to my stomach. Let's get to what Peter Beinart said in response to this. Quote, this is why so many of us can't have sane conversations with younger Jews. The level of I don't know why I'm having a difficult time speaking today, but she's being condescending is essentially what Peter Beinart is saying there. And it's in regard to her comments on social media and how, these young kids are watching the carnage on TikTok And you just can't have a conversation with them. You can't reason with them with all the facts and data we have because they've seen the carnage. But don't you have a problem with the carnage? Don't you have a problem with seeing little kids? Like I saw a video today on X actually of a group of little children in Gaza City specifically, who had just been killed. They're laying next to each other, their lifeless bodies. You see a video like that and you don't think to yourself, at least if you're a normal person, you don't think to yourself, oh no, these images of the carnage the Israeli Defense Forces have committed is bad because, not because it's inhumane, they rob these little children of their lives, but because, oh, it's gonna make it a lot harder for our Hasbara to get through to the young people, to the youths. She doesn't have a problem with the carnage itself. She has a problem with how the carnage, makes all us irrational people feel about the Israeli government. Chris Menahan also reminded everyone on X that the Holocaust Museum of Los Angeles literally took down a post saying never again can't only apply to Jews. I remember that. It was because they received backlash for posting it, so then they took it down. So I guess Holocausts are okay as long as it doesn't happen to the Jews. How about we live in a world where we all agree that genocide, holocausts, war crimes are bad regardless of who the victims are, regardless of who those crimes against humanity are directed toward. Whether it's Jewish people, whether it's Israeli civilians, whether it's Palestinians, it doesn't matter. They're human beings. And that's the thing that really struck me about this story. It's just the full-blown dehumanization of an entire population of people, and they say it out loud with no shame. With no shame. The only thing that keeps me optimistic is the backlash that ensues from ordinary Americans who are overall, generally speaking, good people. Because when they see the carnage in Gaza, when they see what's happening to Palestinians in the West Bank, yeah, it leaves a bad taste in their mouths. They don't like it because they see those individuals as human beings. I wish I could say the same about this woman, but apparently no, I can't. And this would explain why Israel's defenders keep bringing up allegations of Hamas systematically using rape as a tool of war on October 7th, even as the Israeli public overwhelmingly defended IDF prison guards who were seen on surveillance engaging in a gang rape of a Palestinian prisoner. When there were going to be some consequences, an investigation into the matter, people protested, people raged about that. And now you have the literal rapists appearing on Israeli media as the sympathetic figures. It's not fair to us. Our wives are having trouble being intimate with us. Yeah, your wives just saw you on video gang raping a prisoner. But that apparently is okay because the prisoner was Palestinian and, I guess just isn't human and deserved it. I will never turn into this. Never. I will never hate any group of people. I will never dehumanize anyone or any group of people based on their identity. This is the most loathsome garbage I've ever seen in my life. It really is. I can't believe that an American who worked for a presidential administration said this garbage out loud with no shame, but that's what she did. And it does highlight her double standard because I'd like to show you the types of conversations other Zionists are having on the very platform she cited earlier, which is TikTok. She thinks TikTok is the heart of the problem here. But she didn't reference some of the other conversations that are happening on TikTok, like this.
If you were to say, how does Israel solve this problem forever in the future? I think that if you leave a scrap of Palestinian DNA.
Hey, can I ask you real quick, if we destroy all of Gaza, what is the loss to the world?
I didn't say that there's a loss to the war. I don't really think that the Palestinians provide much. If Israel did eliminate 2.3 million Gazans, right? Let's say it took them even a long time, short time, whatever. They just completely eliminate, wipe them all out. This would cause a response by the Arab countries, even ones that are like, I don't care. This would 100% cause a response by the Arab countries.
They would thank us.
Right, this would 100%.
Exactly. Yes, they would thank us.
Complete sociopaths. But there's no problem with those types of conversations taking place on social media. It's the Americans who have a problem with seeing the carnage committed by the IDF in the Gaza Strip. Got it. Dropsite News also reported today that 23 Palestinians were slaughtered by Israeli forces. There's supposed to be a ceasefire, but of course, as I've said before, for Israelis, ceasefire means you cease, we fire. And in this case, again, 23 Palestinians, including a family of 5 with one pregnant woman in that family. So she and her children were killed in that airstrike that took place in the Zaytun area of Gaza City. More than 10 people were also killed in several attacks in Gaza City. 3 people were killed and others wounded after Israeli forces targeted a group inside an UNRWA building west of Khan Yunis. And at least one more person was killed and dozens injured when an Israeli drone fired on a group near Salah al-Din Street. Overall, according to Dropsite News, Israel has carried out 393 ceasefire violations, killing 279 Palestinians, injuring 652 and arresting 35. This is what a ceasefire looks like, according to Israel. Violations include 113 shootings, 174 bombardments, 17 incursions, and 85 demolitions. Gaza's media office says, I'll never forget this. As much as they are hoping that eventually this will die down and we'll forget, I'll never forget this. And Israel also carried out airstrikes on a Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon just yesterday. A refugee camp, seems like it's a specialty of the IDFs. The drone strike hit a car in the parking lot of a mosque within this refugee camp. It reportedly killed 13 people and wounded several others, making it the deadliest strike on Lebanon in the past year. By the way, Lebanon is also a country that Israel allegedly has a ceasefire deal with. The Israeli military claimed it struck a Hamas training compound, which I know it's always Hamas, it's always Hamas. Israel will never take responsibility for its war crimes, it's always someone else's fault. Another strike targeting Hezbollah today also killed 1 person and wounded several others, including students on a bus. Israel is now telling villages in South Lebanon to evacuate ahead of more strikes and I'm sure land annexation. There's also some reporting from Israel on Palestinian detainees who have been tortured to death, most of whom were not Hamas militants, and that's according to 972 magazine, an Israeli publication. New data reveals 98 Palestinian deaths in Israeli custody since October 7th. Postmortems of the deceased and testimonies from former detainees suggest many died from torture, medical neglect, and food deprivation. According to a leaked Israeli intelligence database, dozens were civilians. In fact, most of them were civilians. Of the detained from Gaza, who make up the majority of these prisoners who died in custody, less than 1/3 were classified by the Israeli army itself as militants, meaning Israel was responsible for the deaths of dozens of Palestinian civilians in custody. 972, Local Call, and The Guardian previously revealed that the Army's internal database implies that civilians accounted for 83% of all those killed in Gaza, as well as 3/4 of those arrested and held in detention. But who cares? They're not human in the eyes of people like Mark Levin, Obama's former senior speechwriter, basically people who have provided cover for the atrocities committed by the Israeli government over the last 2 years. I'm ashamed that they consider themselves Americans. I don't want to share an identity with people as loathsome as these individuals, but unfortunately, here we are. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taking apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you can hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team. David Sorrell, Anita Turner. Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Cenk.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated, or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like how is that like at one level it's like, good, what we're talking about it now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, that your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both work to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on, honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy Anna Kasparian.
What's up?
You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
I love cows.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk, Anna Kasparian with you guys. Also, all these wonderful people who signed up: Gigi Tina Dragon, E. Abdul Rahim, and Elias Ullman. You guys are awesome. We appreciate you. Thank you for hitting that join button below the video on YouTube, and everybody else, tyt.com/join. So we're going to continue that Mediaite attack story against us, and I will have strong words.
Yeah, I wanted to give you space to just address the lies that were told about you, Cenk. And so that's what we're gonna focus on this half of it. So basically he's a senior editor, Mediaite senior editor Isaac Shore writes this opinion piece where he misrepresents both me and Cenk. And in the piece, he tries to argue that Cenk has betrayed a moral high ground because according to him, Cenk has changed his tune on Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Here's what he alleges. Owens, Tucker Carlson, and their ilk are no longer unfortunate, bigoted stains on Uyghurs' cause, but design features worth bragging on. Cenk, any response to that?
Yeah, I've got a lot of response to it. So first of all, we've got smear by proxy, right? So, okay, they can say that Fuentes is anti-Semitic because he's clearly said anti-Semitic things. So then they go, okay, but then Tucker Carlson talked to him. Now they don't ever tell you that Tucker Carlson, while talking to him, said it is un-Christian to hate Jews. And he said that several times. They also don't tell you that when Anna talked to Tucker Carlson, he said 2-3 times, it is against his core principles, it is un-Christian, etc. But they literally never say that in any of the stories. And I've read now a couple of Isaac Shore stories, sorry about that. I wish I could get that time of my life back. But anyway, where he never mentions that. Instead, he just says it. He just says, oh, it dog whistles. Well, how about the human whistle where Tucker Carlson says to his millions of his followers over and over again, un-Christian and against the very core of our principles to hate Jewish people or anyone based on how they were born. Okay, so Isaac Shore is an obvious liar who leaves that out. But to be fair to him, most of mainstream media are obvious liars. They all smear him as an anti-Semite. So okay, now we're at Carlson, but at least he talked about it. Now, Anna talked to Tucker, I talked to Tucker, so now we're on to us. And by the way, don't worry, it's gonna get to you. Anyone who criticizes Israel, you're gonna find 6 degrees of Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, whatever it is. And that's Isaac's job, is to smear everyone who criticizes Israel. And he's not the only one, Alex Griffin does it at Mediaite too. Mediaite, which is a publication, as everybody here knows, I really liked, right? But it's now just become smear all of Israel's critics and try to ruin their careers. So we have smear by proxy, that's step 1, okay? And by the way, why is he doing that? And why is that a strategy? Because then the next people who talk to us are going to get smeared next, right? So then the idea is, oh, we can take out the oxygen out of the room and we could kill their careers if we just keep doing this smear by proxy until no one wants to touch them and they can't be platformed, they can't be talked to. So he says, oh golly, gee, me cancel anyone? No, I just told everyone you were a Jew hater.
Yeah,
right, so we'll get back to that one.
But that tactic has backfired, hasn't it? Royally so. I mean, it's amazing how no one's learned any lessons from how much voices like Nick Fuentes's have grown as a result of efforts to, censor people who are specific in their criticism of a foreign government. But that's precisely why people like Isaac Shore are so upset. So I'm gonna give you a little sense of who Isaac Shore is real quick. These are some of his posts on X. He says, the sad truth is that the Palestinians are not a people capable of self-governance. The 2 states, by the way, can you imagine if we said that about Jewish people? That would, first of all, be disgusting. And we would never say it because we don't think at all that any group of people, any religion, any ethnicity is incapable of governing themselves, that they're so inherently flawed that you can't trust them to govern themselves in their own country. Okay, but that's what Isaac Shore thinks about the Palestinians. And it's totally kosher, it's totally okay to say stuff like that openly, publicly. His Islamophobia and his bigotry is totally okay. The 2-state solution is an undesirable pipe dream the American government pays lip service to. So the State Department employees who think "Imagine" by John Lennon is profound don't have a stroke. Let me give you another example.
Can I just comment on that?
Sure, go ahead.
So, all right, so that is by definition a racist statement.
Yeah,
right?
he's a racist.
There's no question that Isaac Shore is a racist. He self-describes. He says the Palestinians are incapable of self-governance. Now, so every ethnicity, race, religion on earth is capable of self-governance except the Palestinians. Again, if you said that about black people, you would obviously be racist, right? If you said it about Polish people or Jewish people, etc., you would be racist or bigoted, right? So he says it about Palestinian people. So I'm not for cancel culture. So I'm not saying Mediaite should fire him. I'm just saying it's curious that they don't mind hiring people who are openly racist. That's interesting. And then meanwhile, they claim that just normal critics of Israel are haters of a certain ethnicity. Whereas their actual employee raises his hand and goes, oh, I hate Palestinians. I'm deeply racist against them. I don't think they're not even human. They can't govern themselves. All humans can do self-governance. If you say only Palestinians can, by definition, you're a racist.
And I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it again. People like Isaac Shore, who respond to people like us, who are deeply, deeply disgusted and bothered by the carnage that we've seen in Gaza. The way that he just immediately makes it about the emotions and the feelings of people who are safe, right? Oh, the criticism of Israel as they are committing these mass atrocities, that's not a big deal. But the way I personally feel about you commenting on it, that's more important.
100%, they do it all the time.
It's so selfish, so narcissistic and self-absorbed. It really is. And the deflection in immediately talking about like, oh, it's about my feelings, it's anti-Semitism, that's what it is. Let's talk about anti-Semitism. Let's not talk about all the children whose body parts their parents are picking up from the ground and putting into plastic bags in Gaza. Let's not talk about that. Those parents and their feelings, they don't matter because those Palestinians are subhuman, right? You racist, disgusting prick.
Okay, in fact, there's more from Isaac Shore about that, so I'll take it from you. I'll go to graphic 12. He says in 2023, the responsibility for all, not some or most, civilian deaths in Gaza lies with Hamas. That's a normal Israeli propaganda. We didn't kill them. The Palestinians made us slaughter them. Okay, fine. He continues, it is the terrorists who are to blame for the horrors to come. So he knows that the Israelis at that point in 2023 are going to commit terrible horrors. But he says preemptively, it's all the Palestinians' fault. They made us murder them. Okay, but let's keep going. Israel will doubtlessly make tactical mistakes as it prosecutes this war, and innocent people will die as a result. That's the tragic, inevitable nature of war, even just war. So good news, Isaac Shore agrees with Hamas. Or bad news, fascinating news, because Hamas says the same thing. They're like, look, the 36 kids that died during October 7th, the Israeli kids, are collateral damage. We went to go kill the IDF and we went to go kill Israelis, and they were there and they were collateral damage. And so no big deal. And Isaac says the same thing, but not about 36 Palestinian kids, about 20,000 Palestinian kids. He's like, collateral damage, who cares? They're just Palestinians. They can't even govern themselves, they're inferior to us. So of course, and I'm gonna tell you ahead of time, we're gonna slaughter them, and then we're gonna blame them for their own slaughter. Okay, but hold, we're not done. Then in 2024, casualty counts from Gaza are presented beside the number killed during the ghastly October 7th terror attack, as if they're comparing like to like. Ooh, where's this going? So to reduce war morality to an exercise in bean counting, under which the side that loses the most is the more commendable party, is a natural yet woefully simplistic and fallacious instinct. Okay, well, look, if that isn't bad enough already, because he's saying, don't worry about the 20,000, or at the time 10,000 or whatever the number is, that's just bean counting. No, we get to slaughter as many of their kids as we want, but if they ever do terrorists, we gotta murder them, we have to kill them. Okay, all right, so now, but wait, he says, continuing, what so many fail to comprehend is that it can at once be true that every innocent life lost is equally tragic, and that not every life lost on one side of a conflict can be counted as a moral indictment of the other.
He's disgusting. He's like legitimately one of the most disgusting people.
So what he's saying is, when Hamas kills 36 Israeli kids, those kids' lives are precious. And we agree, by the way, that is disgusting, and we've said it 2,000 times on this show. But 20,000 lives, that's not the moral equivalent, because those are just Palestinians. So their lives and their kids are not at all important. That's not morally equivalent. By the way, I'm not a hater, he says. You are, for complaining about all of the kids that my beloved Israel has murdered. So I will call Muslims all sorts of names. I will say Palestinians are subhuman and cannot govern themselves.
But if you criticize a nation, a government, I will try to ruin your life by doing a splashy title, Jew hater, Cenk, Anna Kasparian, etc. And he's done that to Tucker Carlson, he's done it to everybody, right? And so, well, we're not gonna take it anymore. So first of all, we're gonna call out and give you the real facts, and you should know that, yeah, every time you see the Isaac Shore in a title somewhere, that means you're reading someone who's an avowed racist and bigot, and one of the worst people in media, and who thinks nothing of the slaughter of children as long as they're not from his beloved Israel, okay? So now he says, well, Cenk, you changed your opinion on Candace Owens. You thought that Candace Owens was saying things that were anti-Semitic before, and now you say that we shouldn't cancel Candace Owens. So what changed? Okay, that's an interesting question. I'm happy to answer that. So here's a couple of things that changed. Since Candace Owens originally started speaking out against Israel, the genocide got way worse. And now over 68,000 people are dead. And Israel, as we predicted at some point in that genocide, was doing it for land acquisition. And now took 53% of Gaza, and they're never going to return it. And Netanyahu yesterday said, no, we will never give the Palestinians a state. We will never cede any ground. And today, as I think, and I'm going to report it on earlier, but Israel is saying, no, we're going to now go back to bombing Gaza.
Yes, that was always the plan to begin
because we were never for peace. We were never for a ceasefire. We were never for that Trump agreement. You'd be a sucker to believe us, right? So, but Isaac is perfectly okay with all that slaughter and all that genocide. So I am not. So that's one thing that's changed since then. Now let's talk about the second thing that's changed. Candace Owens then started doing not just a critique of Israel, but a defense of Muslims, unlike one I have ever seen in American media. So most of mainstream media smears all Muslims as terrorists, jihadis, terrorist sympathizers. And for people like Isaac Shore, not everyone, but people like Isaac Shore, they do it on purpose. So when Israel slaughters their Muslim neighbors and takes their land, you go, oh, that's okay. That's okay, because Muslims are dirty terrorist savages.
They're doing us a favor.
Oh, and they're protecting Western civilization and Judeo-Christian heritage. Now remember, murdering Muslims is awesome. And when Candace tells you that it's not awesome, that maybe Muslims are the same as everyone else, and that we should also think about protecting their lives and their children and their babies, you go, oh, no, you have to cancel her. No, I'm not gonna cancel her. I'm not gonna cancel one of the few people in American media that has ever defended Muslims, ever, and accurately so. And I'll tell you what, another thing changed. Candace opened my eyes to something I didn't realize. She pointed out this propaganda we've been talking about now, that there's been propaganda against Muslims by American media figures my entire life, painted as terrorists, etc. You know, there's 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. Now, if you did that about Jewish people, you said, look, these settlers that are terrorists, right? That are going around killing innocent Palestinians in the West Bank. You see how all Jews are terrorists and terrorist sympathizers and jihadis. Everybody would be rightly outraged. But they smear Muslims that way in mass, mainstream media in mass, my whole life. And you're asking me to cancel the one person who stood up for us? No, the answer is a hard no, hell no, okay? Every Muslim gathering I go to now, everybody's like, oh, thank Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens for us, for finally standing up for Muslim Americans.
On the right, which is rare.
Yeah, and especially on the right, and they have affected so many people. And Isaac is, my guess is, he's livid about that. If she keeps talking, people are gonna think Palestinians are human. And they're gonna be upset that we're killing 20,000 of their children. And maybe we can't get Americans, force Americans to pay for genocide so that we can get more land. And by the way, I keep saying we, because Isaac doesn't seem to care about America at all, at all. All he talks about is Israel, 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 protect Israel. Anyone who criticizes Israel's a Jew hater and you should ruin their life, right? And I want you to understand something about ruining their life thing, because that leads to the last thing that's changed about what Candace said. So the part that I objected to about what Candace said originally was, she said there's a small group of Jews in like LA, DC, New York, etc., that control X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh, don't do that. Don't make it about Jewish people. That's crazy, that's totally wrong, right? So what's happened since then? It's, guys, as we've said on the Young Turks now, literally thousands of times. It is not about Jews. If you conflate the two, that is going to cause not just terrible anti-Semitism, but it's irrational and it's wrong. Okay, so let me say it one more time. Guys, there's people who are Jewish plumbers and dentists and physics professors. Nobody called them. Israel didn't ask their permission. It has nothing to do with them, no matter how much pro-Israel radical extremists like Isaac Shore, and honestly, the majority of mainstream media keep telling you, no, when someone says Israel, they mean Jews. They're Jew haters. Because anti-Semite wasn't enough, it wasn't working anymore, so they switched to something more harsh, Jew hater. And oh, by the way, if Cenk's a Muslim, smear him even more and maybe dehumanize them and do until something goes wrong, right? And so now, okay, but so that's why I thought Candace was wrong about using the word Jewish in that context. And by the way, some of the greatest peace fighters here in this country are Jewish Americans. We've gone over this 1,000 times, right? But are there pro-Israel extremists? So I think her labeling was wrong. But are there pro-Israel extremists in media and in politics that try to cancel anyone who criticizes Israel?
Yes, absolutely,
yes,
absolutely,
of course.
Absolutely.
In fact, that's Isaac Shore is one of them. There's another writer at Mediaite, that's one of them. And it's, guys, it isn't, again, for the billionth time, it isn't about Jewish. So here's an example, right? What do we mean by that? So it's an anti-Semitic trope when you say all Jews are responsible for X, Y, or Z because they didn't do it. It doesn't mean that no one did it, right? So for example, Bill Ackman and Kevin O'Leary, who's not Jewish, have said on multiple occasions and organized letters saying, if you participated in a pro-Palestine protest on a college campus, we're going to put your name on a list and make sure you're never hired on Wall Street. Well, they proved Candace correct, except the Jewish part, because Kevin O'Leary isn't Jewish, and most Jewish people are not in favor of this. These are just the zealots who say that Israel should be allowed to commit a genocide, okay? And that if you complain about it, you're the hateful person. Defending a genocide is wonderful, criticizing a genocide is hateful, and you're not allowed to work on Wall Street. There was a letter that was sent around early on in Hollywood. I mean, these are literal facts, right? And there was an agent, I think Tom Cruise's agent, et cetera, that showed sympathy towards Palestinians who were getting killed. And they're like, no, that's it. She should be fired. Here's a letter. And then here's all the other people who should be fired. Now, that is literal. So is she correct that there are she's not correct that it's Jews, but is there pro-Israel extremists in those places who try to ruin your life? Yes, yes. And then I want to tell you what it means to ruin people's lives. Go ahead, Anna.
I don't want to go too long with this, but I'm just going to get this out, okay? I have a very simple litmus test. And I'm not really big into litmus tests, but in regard to determining whether someone is a good person or bad person, I question whether or not they value human life. Not just Israeli lives, not just Palestinian lives, not just Jewish lives, not just American lives, but just human life. And if you are out here treating one group or the other as subhuman and worthy of mass slaughter, my test indicates you fail, you're a bad person, I have no interest in you. So when Hamas carried out what it did on October 7th and killed innocent civilians, I specifically raged about that on this show because I value human life. But if you're out there attacking us because we find it loathsome and disgusting and criminal to engage in genocide, maybe consider the fact that you're the bad guy.
Yeah, no, I have considered that, and I'm positive. People like Isaac Shore are terrible human beings. They're deeply immoral people. They're cheerleading for a genocide. It doesn't get any worse than that. I'm super proud to fight against a genocide. So last couple of things about Isaac. He says, here's graphic 16. The frustrating part of talking to anyone on the quote unquote pro-Palestinian side is that they will not acknowledge the fact that 70% of Palestinians support October 7th. That is a principal, intractable problem at the core of this conflict. One side is stuck in the 11th century. So you see, it's not just Hamas, all Palestinians are guilty and they are barbaric. They're stuck in the 11th century. Now, there's a poll that shows 82% of Jewish Israelis say that the Israeli government should keep going and that they have no problem with the genocide in Gaza and that they want the Israeli government to keep hammering the Palestinians. So that is 82% of the Israeli Jews saying, yeah, I love a genocide. Now, look, I think that poll has some issues, and I showed a different poll that had it at 54%. But either way, a majority of Israeli Jews say, yeah, this genocide wasn't enough. We need more. Now, if I use Isaac's logic, I'd say, oh, then terrorism is okay. Since the Israelis are voting in favor of Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who are clearly like Goebbels, Hitler, Himmler kind of type of figures who outwardly say from the river to the sea, and we're never gonna allow the Palestinians to be free, and we're gonna take all their land and we're gonna kill them, etc. So I could say, well, then terrorism is justified. But I would never say that because I'm a good person. And I don't think a random person in Israel is at fault for their government. And no matter what the polling shows, etc. But you see how he's dehumanizing them, just going, they're all terrorists. Yeah. Who cares? Slaughter them, right? And lastly, today he says about all this. I posted about this on X, and he says, "What a clumsy deflection this is. Nobody's canceling you. You and Anna have been promoting Tucker and Candace. I think that's bad and argued as much in a column. If you could defend your actions on their merits, you would do so instead of throwing this undignified tantrum." Okay, so this is another classic trick. He calls you a Jew hater, tries to ruin your life, and then when you fight back, this is an undignified tantrum. You're throwing a tantrum.
It's far more dignified.
I'm the victim. I'm the victim. Isaac says, I'm the victim. Oh, I'm a little genocide supporter. And you threw a tantrum against me just because I tried to ruin your career by doing this giant headline about how you're a Jew hater. Who would want to work with a Jew hater?
You need to get it right, Cenk. He is a dignified genocide supporter.
Oh, yes,
dignified.
Yes, and so then, but more importantly, go to the point about the cancellation. So how is it canceling? Isaac doesn't have enough power, right? He's a little pipsqueak. All he can do is try to smear people, and Mediaite gives him the space to do that because Mediaite has turned into, unfortunately, trash, pro-Israeli trash. Every time there's and the thing that Isaac and Alex do every time is, all of the right wing agrees Tucker Carlson should be canceled. He's a terrible Jew hater. And then they have all Israel first guys. Mark Levin agrees, Ben Shapiro agrees, my other buddy from Tel Aviv agrees, right? That's a lie. Tucker Carlson is way more popular than Mark Levin or Ben Shapiro or any of those Israel first guys, but Mediaite lies to you and tells you, oh, the right wing hates Tucker Carlson. The right wing has already canceled Candace Owens. That's not remotely true, okay? But they're lying to you to try to make it seem like it's toxic to work with Tucker or Candace or us. So why do they do that? They do that because they want to make sure that nobody does any business deals with you, nobody goes on your show, etc., so that they slowly take the oxygen out of the room. And this is their systematic approach to destroying all of Israel's critics so they're no longer on the air. And then they go, oh golly, gee, I didn't cancel anyone. I just told everyone that you're the most hateful, racist person, and that they would be next if they were to associate with you. We would go to them for the smear by proxy next.
Yeah.
So they better not, nobody better work with you, otherwise we're gonna ruin their life next. And by the way, if you think it hasn't had business consequences to us, you're very, very wrong. It has had significant business consequences. I don't mean this article, I mean this constant attack of saying, hey, and there's—
Stop killing Palestinians, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you wanna know, I'm not gonna stop, okay? Because my guiding light, and I know this is your guiding light as well, is truth and justice, an actual concern about our country, the American people, and what it is that we are forced into funding. And currently, it's essentially aiding and abetting the empire expansion of the Israeli government.
Yeah, so last thing is, I want to be crystal clear about two things. So they'll never get me to hate Jewish people. Now, why? One, I'm not irrational. I don't think that people are born a certain way. Only an idiot and a deep racist like Isaac Shore would think that, right? And number two, I know you're not supposed to say you have Jewish friends, okay? Oh, ha, 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 yes, so has it been a 47-year ruse with all my Jewish friends? Oh, I can't wait to spring a trap on them, etc. But I also say that I have Jewish family. You know why? Because I have Jewish family. Like, oh yeah, sure you do. But I do. So do I want people to hurt my family members? No. Do I want people to hurt my lifelong friends? No, absolutely not. And do I want people to violate the very core principle that I have fought for on this show for over 20 years, which is that we are all equal. We are all the same. No, Muslims are not any different, Jews are not any different, Christians are not any different. You would have to be a lunatic to think that, right? And so they're not gonna get me to hate anyone, no matter how hard they try. And they know if you spread more anti-Semitism, that'll help Israel's cause, because then the government officials bought by AIPAC and the Israeli lobby, oh, it's a trope. No, they literally purchased 90% of Congress. So did Big Pharma, so did Big Oil, right? But they did as well. They're like, oh yeah, Big Pharma you can call out. But if you say it about the Israeli lobby, anti-Semite, right, et cetera, right? So, no, we're not going to fall for that trap, and we're not interested in hating anyone. That's the exact opposite of what we do. Okay, and the last thing I won't stand for is, no, I will never bow to Israel, ever.
Nope.
And I want Israel to be a safe haven. I want it to exist. I want a two-state solution, and all of that. But you've got to go back to reasonable 1967 borders or whatever negotiated agreement that you have. But if you say no, you have to bow your head as we do a genocide and take half of Gaza, as we attack 7 of our neighbors and then pretend to be victims, and you have to pay for it. Cenk, you have to pay for our genocide. No. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we end that genocide. We end the imperial aggressive wars that Israel starts. And most of all, that we stop funding it. Stop robbing the American people to pay for anyone's genocide. And it's not because they're Jewish, it's despite the fact that they're Jewish. We say, yes, I love you, and again, I grew up in a town that was predominantly Jewish, and et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean, since I love Jewish people, they get a special exemption in Israel. They don't represent all Jewish people, and there are no special exemptions for genocide. There just aren't. So no, we're gonna fight to defund Israel. We want to make sure that they get $0 for, I don't want to pay for a genocide. It's that simple. And if you're still supporting Israel's genocide at this late date, this sick, disgusting, mass slaughtering government of Israel, well, you're obviously a terrible person, you're immoral, you're deeply hateful, and you're racist. You think killing Palestinians is no big deal. So now we're super clear about it. But my guess is he'll take this and he'll go, see, anti-Semites. Because one-track mind, smear them, smear them, smear them, smear them, smear them. Okay, and now anybody who calls me an anti-Semite going forward, I'm gonna go nuclear. And not just like rage, I didn't rage here, in just finding out what kind of a deep racist they are and exposing them. Okay, we've given way too much coverage to a irrelevant racist, but okay, I guess Mediaite says that they're valued members of their website, and they're gonna continue to keep hiring racists and bigots to smear all Muslims and spread Muslim hate, Arab hate, and racism all over the country. So that's Mediaite's decision.
All right, we gotta take a quick break. We'll be right back.
All right, guys, so back during the break, I gotta read these blind because I couldn't read these comments earlier. So Replicant Android K says, this must be comments about earlier in the show. Am I missing anywhere in the Constitution booklet if the United States is a Christian community? I also Googled it and no success so far. No, that what I love about this country is that we separate church and state. If you wanted to combine church and state, you'd go to deeply evil governments today, not countries, but governments, like Saudi Arabia or Israel, where they say, no, we're gonna mix church and state, and we're gonna privilege our religion over others, and we're gonna be bigots and racists for the rest of time, okay? I'm not interested in that. That's why we came to America, a country we love for equality and justice for all. DJ Payne says, I don't let those hateful bigots in any shape or form rent space in my head. All noise, all bark, and no bite. Hate will never win. I hear you, brother. It's easy for you to say, but Anna doesn't know this, and I'm not gonna get into details. But yeah, does that have business effect on us? Yeah, huge. So easy to say I'm gonna dismiss it, but they're literally trying to tear down the network. So, okay, The Transcendental Man says, please stop saying a single Israeli government and its army. This has been the nature of Israel, founded by literal terrorists since its inception. So I'm reading these guys' comments, but was it literal terrorists who formed Israel? Yes. Irgun, Haganah, Stern Gang, and did the leaders of those terrorist groups then become the prime ministers of Israel? Yes. And why does Israel still continue to do terrorism today? Why is it a rogue terrorist state that is totally out of control? Because it was born from those terrorist leaders, and for them, they think terrorism works. We got Israel through terrorism. And so there was more complications. Yeah, the UN, yeah, Balfour, yeah, a million other things, right? And those are things that are relevant, but at the end of the day, did they bomb the King David Hotel? They did. Did they do endless terrorist attacks against civilians? They did. Did those people become the prime ministers? Yes. During the Nakba in 1948, did they slaughter the Palestinians and drag their bodies through towns? So you think that, they have this mythology of 750,000 to 800,000 Palestinians, let alone their kids, which is well over 1 million, just went for a picnic and decided not to come back. No, they ran for their lives because the terrorist leaders of Israel were murdering Palestinians and then dragging them through town so that everybody would know if you don't leave, you're going to be murdered next. Oh, hey, look, that's what they did in Gaza. Again and again and again in 1967, pretend to be victims, but in reality, they struck first. They invented this thing called a preemptive war, where they attacked and destroyed the air force of all of their neighbors and pretended to be the victims. When I got taught this stuff in America, I was taught that Israel was attacked in 1967. That's not remotely true. Israel attacked. And guess what they did? Oh, look at that. They got the Golan Heights, West Bank, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula. So they gave the Sinai back in a peace deal, so that neutered Egypt, their top enemy at the time. Egypt is much stronger than the rest of those countries. So, okay, we do a peace deal with Egypt, but we keep West Bank, Gaza Strip, Golan Heights, etc. That was another aggressive war to take land. They've been trying to form Greater Israel the entire time. They have a map of it in their Knesset, in their cabinet meetings, and they constantly talk about how we're going to form Greater Israel, which, by the way, stretches all the way into Turkey, down to Saudi Arabia. So these wars are the tip of the iceberg. They've got a lot more wars and genocide headed in our direction. Okay, so back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. First of all, shout out to Rolfing y Movento por Helano Chiampalini. There's no way I said that right, but thank you for joining, appreciate that. Trey Uzi, thank you for gifting a membership, we appreciate that. On Twitch, Leica Fox said, Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield are two of the strongest fighters for Palestinian rights. So this is why they're their tricks to get all Americans to hate Jews so they could use it as an excuse to support Israel is not gonna work. Because I know Ben Cohen, I know Robert Greenwald, and they're two angels on earth. Robert Greenwald does Brave New Films. And I can list you literally 200 other Jewish Americans just like them. And they fight for Palestinian rights, they fight to end the genocide, and they fight with everything they've got. Jerry Greenfield left Ben and Jerry's in protest because they want to protect Palestinians. They actually, in my opinion, my experience, are doing the Jewish culture that I grew up knowing and loving, which is fight for the underdog, fight for the victims, question authority, question the rabbi. Those are all the beautiful things that they learn, and apparently most of the Israel supporting mainstream media missed entirely. Oh, no. We think it means being Jewish, it means that you get to commit a genocide, no one's allowed to criticize you. No, it doesn't mean that at all, and you're smearing Jewish people. No, you're absolutely right. I can go on forever, as you guys know. We got to take another break here. Oh, but before we do, real quick, guys, don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
All right, let's go to members on TYT.com. Armand74 says, thank you, Anna and TYT, for your continued dedication and support for our democracy. You inspire us to stand together and make a lasting difference. Thank you, we appreciate you. Benjamin 89701 says, incapable of governing themselves was used against black people to justify their oppression. Yep. Look, I'm gonna get into this more later, but it's like saying to black people who are protesting lynching, no, you have to pay for that lynching, and if you dare complain about the lynching, you're a racist against white people, and your career should be ended immediately. You should not be platformed by anyone. And if you're offended by that analogy, wait, is the murder of over 68,000 people at a bare minimum? Anyway, I don't want to compare tragedies. All the tragedies are horrific, except the Israel supporters say the genocide we commit. Anyway, Doc Daniel says, did that Mediaite jerk just take a shot at John Lennon? That's funny. Yes, he did. I'm a damn lib says, Israel gives everyone a handler. Was she Obama's? Referring to Hurwitz. I don't know, but I saw the story about Hurwitz that Anna did in the first hour. Now some of the Israeli supporters are defending strong Nazis? And how
openly.
I mean, it's stunning. It's stunning. We shouldn't have taught the Holocaust that much because now people are trying to protect innocent victims from the strong Israelis. Do you hear yourself? And she was making fun of young Jews. She was saying, when I talk to young Jews, they're so stupid. They don't understand we're allowed to do a genocide. No, those young Jews are the ones that actually learned the lessons of Jewish culture. They're the actual representatives of the Jewish community. You monsters who support Israel and their genocide, you're the ones not getting it. Okay. Rob3 Chasforth says, Shore's comment that the Palestinians aren't capable of governing themselves disqualifies him from being anything close to journalism. Media doesn't think so. Media thinks, oh, you want to smear Muslims and you're racist against Palestinians? Love it, we'd love to hire you. I hope there's no Muslims working or Arabs working at Mediaite. I mean,
I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt it. But I mean, I guess they think like it's okay. You should work next to Isaac. Isaac doesn't think you're fully human. And by the way, if you were in Gaza, Isaac would say, you're somebody's being a bean counter when they talk about how you were murdered. Who cares? You're just a Palestinian. You're just a Muslim. Okay. Mark Card Shark says, dude is just late to the party ripping on TYT because you're way bigger than he and Mediaite. They get bigger when you pay attention to them, but it will only last today. Keep up the great work, Cenk and Anna. Look, I appreciate you guys, but people in media read that. So then we can't get booked on shows. People don't want to do deals with us, etc. They know that. That's their whole point. Let's try to destroy the Young Turks because they're speaking out against our beloved, beloved Israel. By the way, dual loyalty, you can't say it, trope. No. There's no question in the world that people like Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, and Isaac Shore value Israel 2,000 times, 20,000 times more than they value America. They almost never talk about America. All these Israel. You have to support Israel, otherwise you're a Jew hater. Give me your money. Give Israel your money. You're a Jew hater. Give me the goddamn money. Oh no, you can't say money. Well, brother, did Israel take $31 billion off of us during the genocide to pay for the genocide? They did. So I know, but don't say facts because people might not like our propaganda then. I don't give a goddamn about your propaganda. We're gonna say facts over and over on the Young Turks. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna.
All right, well, let's talk about something a little different from what we've been discussing. Some arrogance when it comes to those employed by ICE, including those who engage in criminality. A Department of Homeland Security employee was just arrested alongside 15 other men for allegedly soliciting sex from a minor. Now, while he might have thought that his position in the federal government and in ICE in particular made him untouchable, he quickly learned that he was very wrong. And honestly, I'm happy that we're all learning that he was wrong. Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, so a lot of these guys now think, oh, I'm above the law. You're not above the law, brother, as you're about to find out. So
So yesterday morning, a guy by the name of Booker Hodges, who happens to be the police chief in Bloomington, Minnesota, announced that 16 men had been arrested as part of what he dubbed Operation Creep. Now you'll understand why he named the Operation Creep once I give you the details. The sting operation involved undercover agents communicating with subjects who believed that they were paying for sex with a 17-year-old girl. Now, the men who ended up getting arrested range in their ages between 18 to 49. Now, you might be wondering, why would an 18-year-old get arrested for soliciting sex from a 17-year-old? Well, it's because some of them ended up bringing drugs and firearms to what they thought was a meetup with a young girl. Now, here's the heart of the story. 41-year-old Alexander Back was one of the men who was arrested. He is a civilian auditor with the Department of Homeland Security. And according to the criminal complaint filed Friday, Back responded to a fake online advertisement offering prostitution services. In a text message to Back on November 13th, an undercover officer posing as a 17-year-old girl named Bella wrote, "You okay if I'm a little younger than my ad says? Just want to be honest." He writes back saying, "Sure." And then she says, "K, cause I'm 17, and one guy got hella mad at me." Now, after clarifying for a second time that this undercover officer posing as a sex worker was 17, Bella gave Back an address to meet her. So he shows up in a car registered to his wife, and that's when police arrested him and seized his phone. Now, this is where it gets good. According to Police Chief Hodges, when he was arrested, he said, quote, "I'm ICE, boys." Hodges was unmoved by Back's arrogant assumption that being employed by ICE would somehow let him off the hook for soliciting sex with an underage girl. Unfortunately for him, we locked him up. My understanding is he helped send people to see federal authorities. I think he's going to see some federal authorities because I think the feds are going to take this case. Back has been charged at the state level with a prostitution-related felony offense of hiring a person reasonably believed to be under the age of 18, but at least 16, that's what the law is. And he was booked into county jail on November 13th, but was released on $75,000 bond 2 days later. And as Hodges mentioned, it's possible that he could face federal charges as well. The federal charge of attempted incitement of a minor carries a 10-year mandatory minimum prison sentence.
Okay, so there's now a feeling that some people are above the law, right? And there's gonna be no accountability. So where did that come from? It comes from a couple of places. First of all, Donald Trump saying to ICE, that's it, wear masks, no badges. So, and unmarked cars. So no one knows who you are. And so what you do will have no accountability. By definition, that's the point, right? So if you're ICE, that's it, you're above the law. Okay, so it's not complicated to figure out where that idea came from, right? And then Donald Trump has pardoned tons of white collar criminals who committed mainly financial fraud. And a lot of them gave him campaign donations or bought his meme stock and funneled money to him in different ways. And then he pardoned all the January 6th guys. So you committed these crimes, you attacked cops, etc. You broke into Congress, doesn't matter. As long as you're with Donald Trump, the law doesn't apply, you're above the law. So can you begin to see why somebody might think, oh no, it's okay, I'm ICE, boys. And if I'm ICE, that means I have no accountability. I could rape underage girls, I could do whatever I want, and it's totally fine. But on that topic, there's also the issue of the Israeli government official in Vegas who did the same exact thing, right? Young girls here while he was doing, I guess, sexual tourism in America.
And he thought he was soliciting sex with a 15-year-old.
With a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And so he was an Israeli government official working on cybersecurity for us, in other words, infiltrating our cybersecurity. And they let him go. They let him go back to Israel. No accountability, and he's above the law. So in a sense, I get why this guy got that in his head. He's like, look, if you're with Trump, you're in a certain category. You could, and by the way, Epstein. None of the powerful people who did that, other than Epstein and Maxwell, have been held to account.
That's exactly right. I mean, when you create a culture of lawlessness, well, then lawlessness will ensue. I think norms are important. Certain taboos exist for a reason. And when you send a message that certain people are above the law, they're gonna behave as though they're above the law.
Yeah, and so, and some people are above the law. If you're really powerful, like Epstein's clients, you are above the law. If you're an Israeli, you are above the law. We will send you back to Israel. You will not face justice, right? If you're ICE and you did it on duty, right? And you wore a mask and didn't have a badge and nobody caught you, you are above the law, right? And now that's why people have started pretending they're ICE. We covered that story before.
Yep.
And they're going around raping women because they think, how are they gonna catch me? I look like ICE, I got a mask, I got no badge, I got fatigues just like they do. I get to rape them and then I walk away. And that's what's happening. Because now rule of law is breaking down.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Okay, so guys, here's what we're gonna do. Dan McKnight is next on The Revolution, and he is a conservative, and he doesn't want the National Guard used. It's a super interesting character. That's exactly what we're talking about, the left and the right uniting to take back America and make it what it was. So I'm sure, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Don't miss the next segment. We'll be right back with that interview. All right, welcome to The Revolution. I can never say it right. Sorry, what show. Anyways, now we're gonna have a conservative join us. I love this. Dan McKnight, he's with Defend the Guard, and we're gonna find out what Defend the Guard is and find out if we love this conservative movement. Dan, welcome, brother.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Good to be here.
Yeah, no problem. So tell us what it is, Dan.
Yeah, Defend the Guard, we are a veteran-led organization, and we got tired of fighting in Washington, D.C., trying to get politicians to reclaim their authority and declare war before they send more of us off to fight in a war that most of us couldn't fight on a map. And after being rejected in DC, we decided to go back to the States and fight from better ground where we had a better chance and a better leverage. And we came up with this concept called Defend the Guard. And it's a piece of state-based legislation that says that the states, if they pass this bill, the governors and the legislative prohibition will keep their National Guard from being federalized if the purpose is to send them overseas to war that hasn't been declared by Congress. And it gives the governors and the states a stop check, just a moment in time where they can flip the middle finger to the federal government and say, you're not taking our men and women, our part-time soldiers, to go fight in Djibouti, Africa, or Afghanistan unless Congress has done their job and declared war, which, by the way, they haven't done since 1942. So all the wars we've had since World War II have been undeclared without the authorization of us, the people. And we've got the bill introduced in over 30 states. We've passed 7 different legislative bodies. I am a conservative, yes, and I appreciate you saying that, but we are a non-political organization looking to build a coalition, left, right, and center. And we work with anybody that's anti-war and pro-constitutional war powers, that we get the power back out of the executive branch into Congress where it belongs.
Well, let me drive the partisans crazy by saying I love what you're doing, and I want everybody to go to bringourtroopshome.us, bringourtroopshome.us. But let's keep talking about this. So Washington can lose their minds. It's not like you don't know what it's like to fight in wars. 13 years in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves, U.S. Army, Idaho Army National Guard. You did an 18-month deployment in Afghanistan. And so before I get back to the specifics of your policy proposals, which I think are brilliant, tell me what you learned from that experience.
Sure, I was gung-ho. After 9/11, I actually joined back up. I'd been out and I was finishing up my college degree, and 9/11 happened, and I ran down and re-enlisted right away into the Idaho National Guard, because in Idaho we have an attack helicopter, an Apache helicopter battalion, and I knew that we were gonna be the ones called on to go to Afghanistan because that's what we were built for. And I ran down there, and sure enough, we got called up in 2005, 4 years after the war started, and I was honored to go. We were down in Fort Hood training, and me and all of my brothers and sisters that were down there training, 8 of us on our weekend before we left, we got in a van and we drove to Crawford, Texas. I don't know if you know what's in Crawford, Texas. That's where George W. Bush's ranch is at. We were so excited to go to the war for George W. Bush. He was our guy. We went to his ranch hoping that we could just wave at him and tell him that we had his back and we were gonna go end this thing for him and we were gonna cut the head off the snake. And so we were all fired up and ready to go. We get there, and Jake, in 18 months, we had 5 different policy shifts where we went from shock and awe to winning hearts and minds to provincial reconstruction to securing their free and fair elections. We never had a defined purpose, but what we did learn is that there was no oversight. Nobody in Congress was paying attention because they hadn't declared war. They'd just written a blank check to the president and let him send us anywhere that they wanted. And so while we were there, we were watching our friends die and people come home blown up with limbs missing. And all the while, we were fighting somebody today who was our friend tomorrow. And our friends yesterday was our enemy today over there. And we could never get a real clear definition of what we were doing. And many of us came home. Global War on Veterans came home disillusioned. It's still happening today. And we gathered and we said, you know what, we're done with this. We're done letting wars be fought in our name with our blood, unless our representatives are gonna do something about it. And a lot of us went underground, we grew beards, we got angry. A lot of us came out live during the Ron Paul revolution when he was talking about anti-war. Then in 2016, Tulsi Gabbard on the Democratic side and Donald Trump on the Republican side were both saying the same thing during their run-up for the presidential election. And a lot of us came out of the woodwork and said, you know what? The time is right for us to fight this battle. And so what we learned is that our country, they love to tie the yellow ribbon around the tree, and we support our troops, and we give you half-price breakfast on Veterans Day at the Applebee's, but they don't really mean anything that actually truly supports the troops. If support means reclaiming your authority and forcing your representative to vote on war, America didn't have an appetite for it. And that's the message we've been preaching, and it is now back mainstream. Anti-war, end the war, no unconstitutional wars, end the forever wars. These are our mantras that we started, and it's now part of everyday commentary, except on the mainstream media.
Yeah, so I want to come back to Trump and Tulsi and see if they delivered on their promises based on what you're saying. But first, a little bit more about Afghanistan and Iraq, right? So you didn't go to Iraq, you were in Afghanistan. Afghanistan lasted for 20 brutal years, right? And so they kept saying victory's around the corner, and if we leave, oh my God, it's gonna be the worst, and America's gonna be attacked or whatever. So before I even get into Iraq, how much of a lie do you think that was in Afghanistan? And why do you think we stayed there for 20 years when it was abundantly obvious a couple of years in that we were never going to be able to fix Afghanistan?
Sure, no, when we went to Afghanistan, Congress gave a blanket, like I said, a blank check. They gave a authorization of use of military force instead of a declaration of war. And in that authorization, they said the following. They said that we're going to Afghanistan to capture or kill anybody that attacked us on 9/11, to capture or kill anybody that aided or planned the attacks, and to kill Osama bin Laden. Well, on October 7th, the first October 7th of 2001, we put boots on the ground, CIA and military special ops. And by February of 2002, we had destroyed every training camp, every intelligence network, and every single person that had attacked us on 9/11 was already dead. They died on 9/11. And we went there looking for Afghanis and Taliban when it was Saudi nationals that attacked us. And so that blank check that gave us the authority to go there obviously was a lie. And we stayed there, like you said, for 21 years. And so we were disillusioned when we were there, and we saw that we could never put together the promise that George W. Bush made and Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld, that we were gonna deliver democracy, we'd be treated as liberators, that we were gonna spread American goodness and apple pie and baseball, and it was all a lie. We were in a country with people that don't identify with nationalism. They don't call themselves Afghanistan citizens. They're members of tribes, of sects. And so what we were trying to do there is demonstrated utter failure because we didn't actually know the culture. We didn't know what we were getting into. And so that lie led to the next one, which was probably the original intent. The original lie was Iraq. George W. Bush needed to avenge his father. He needed to finish what Daddy started. And they lied us into that war. Don Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney, God rest his soul. I have a hole in my heart that I don't get to fight that man every day anymore. But they lied us into a war, and they dragged good people into it, like Colin Powell, who traded his own soul to lie us into a war by going to the UN and saying that there were going to be weapons of mass destruction. So 2 lies back to back, 21 years. The global war on terror has now been going on for 24 years. It's spread across over 100 countries. We're in 70 nations across the African continent still today. And the National Guard is the ones that are bearing the brunt of it because the active duty military can't maintain that pace of mission.
Yeah, so Dan, I don't know what makes you a conservative, but I know what makes you an American. And I love what you're saying. That's exactly, everything you said is 100% verifiable facts. So now, one last thing about that. I want to talk about root causes, right? Because so at one point, New York Times reports that you guys actually had Bin Laden. I don't mean your unit specifically, but we had a Bin Laden cornered in Tora Bora. And American general calls in and asks Rumsfeld for permission to pursue. And Rumsfeld says, denied. Denied. I mean, we went for Bin Laden. Bin Laden, according to the New York Times and their sources, said that he had done his last prayers because he thought you guys were on the way. But Rumsfeld pulled him back. And Rumsfeld also said at a different time, Afghanistan is not good enough. It's not a target-rich environment like Iraq is, right? Now, a lot of people benefited from the Iraq war. Defense contractors did, the oil companies, when instability hit the Middle East, they made a tremendous amount of money. Halliburton, it was Dick Cheney's former company that he led and got a $34 million exit package from right before he started this war. Israel said that Iraq was their #1 enemy. Iraq did not attack us. Iraq was actually opposed to Al-Qaeda. Saddam Hussein would kill Al-Qaeda on the spot. So what's your sense of why in the world we went to Iraq?
Well, obviously it's the military-industrial complex that steers American politics. They're the most powerful lobby. Every steel and glass building that surrounds K Street in Washington, D.C., they're all filled with Raytheon and Northrop Grumman and all the defense contractors. But you're right, we did have Osama bin Laden. We had battle update briefs 2005 to 2007 where we knew where he was at. And we were in the Tora Bora region. We were in northeastern Pakistan in the Pesh River Valley, Korangal Valley, all the famous battles in that northeast. That's where we were at. We knew where he was at. And we were told to stand down, not me specifically, but that was the message that we heard every single day. And our pilots would be flying missions and they'd be told, hey, you have what's called a Blue Force tracker so that every movement that our equipment and our personnel made was being tracked and monitored. And they would tell them to steer off, abort your mission, return to base when they would get too close to certain restricted areas, obviously where key targets were at. And so going into Iraq obviously was a play by the military-industrial complex. We talk about Dick Cheney, Halliburton, the amount of money that was wasted in those wars, being paid through defense contractors was an abomination. I can tell you more than one time when we were in these remote outposts in the northeastern region in Pesh River Valley, and helicopters would fly in and they'd kick off a 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot box on a pallet and then take off again, and it'd be out there on the flight line. You go out and look inside the box and it's nothing but shrink wrapped and stacked $100 bills. And that money was being used to buy off local influence from the warlords and the sheep herders and the farmers and all the people in the area. But those are the same people we were fighting the next day. And the defense contractors, they were taking that times 1,000, that times 1,000,000. The amount of money they were making was just a disgrace. And George W. Bush had to fix the economy, and he fixed it by propping up the war industry and the military-industrial complex. And so I don't like to be so sinister as to say that the war was about money, but goddamn it was about money. And if we don't say it out loud, then no one else is going to say it. Instead, they're going to talk about how patriotic we are and how great guys like Corey Mills and Dan Crenshaw were born of the war movement, and they came home and they're leading their nation now. That's not my bag. Let's just tell the truth and talk about why we were there.
Yeah, 100%. Look, there's a ton of things that could be said about also the banking lobby speculated on oil. They made a killing as well, et cetera, et cetera. But you're right. The number one culprit is the defense contractors. They literally stood to make trillions of dollars. So they think
nothing compared to what they're going to make in the reconstruction of Ukraine. They're going to clean up. They're going to make more in that reconstruction than all the last 10 wars combined.
Then there's Gaza, and we go on and on, right? And so, and for those guys, you're collateral damage. You and the guys they sent to fight those wars are, so we hear about collateral damage among Palestinians and Ukrainians, et cetera. But we got our own collateral damage that sent by the sick politicians who work for any donor that'll come by and give them the money. Why do we need a revolution? It's a political one, a nonviolent one, because these sons of bitches don't represent us at all. And they will literally send us to go die in a foreign land so that their donors can make more money. That's right. It's unacceptable. I can't stand it. All right, so Dan, let's go now back to present day. So Trump said he was anti-war. I know a lot of people supported him because of that, and the Democrats don't have a great track record, right? So Joe Biden also voted for the Iraq war, and whenever there's a war, they're like, let's fund Ukraine, let's fund Israel to commit. Now that's not even a war, that's just a genocide. Let's make sure we pay for that genocide, et cetera, right? So then, since the Democrats are unbearable on these things, and me on the left, a lot of us, populist left, going, no, the left was supposed to be anti-war from the 1960s to today. We have been most consistently anti-war movement there has ever been, right? From day one, from Vietnam on, right? And they're like, oh, you shut up, you stupid voters. Lobbyists, where are you? Give me the money, right? Okay, so you go to Trump, and then Trump gets in, all of a sudden we're bombing Iran. He says we're about to go to war with Venezuela. What in the world is that, Dan?
I'll tell you, it's one of the most disappointing things coming from the right and working really hard in the America First movement. I spend a lot of my time right now defining America First is not MAGA and MAGA is not America First. America First is America First. It's so well defined in the words that it's used in its name. And so, we talk all the time about the wars that Trump has ended, the 8 small wars around the world. None of them were American wars, though. Let's talk about ending some American wars. Let's look at the war that we're fighting in Central America and South America right now. Venezuela, we are at war, whether you like to say it or not. We are at war with a nation that did not attack us. Sure, they're helping provide some of the drugs that are coming across our border, but that's not, they keep talking about the fentanyl crisis, and that's why we're in Venezuela. Well, the fentanyl's not coming from Venezuela, it's coming from China. I think Venezuela is just table stakes. It's the smallest thing you need as a warmonger to show that you still have that bloodlust, and they're an easy target. We're not going to lose a life fighting them, and it's disgusting, and I hate to see it. If Venezuela was so much of a threat to America that we did need to go down there and bomb their little speedboats coming across the Caribbean, then I'd say, you know what? I'm all in. Send me, but let's vote on it in Congress. Let's make the 470 or whatever it is people in Congress that represent us, that have our authority, make them give the informed consent of the American people. Make them have oversight. Make them restrict it. If the president's going to go fight without that authorization, then they need to at least hold his feet to the fire on the war powers. They need to do something to show that they're not a feckless body. Look what they did today. They're celebrating this giant win of getting the Epstein files passed, by a Thomas Massey, who they say, oh, Thomas has never passed anything, but he passes this bill. It's gonna do nothing. That file's been scrubbed. It's been cleaned. I want Congress to stand up and unify, left, right, and center. Stand up and unify. The way that they stood up for that bill with Thomas Massey and the Epstein files, stand up that way when it comes to sending your sons and daughters, your neighbors, your tradesmen, your police officers and firefighters, sending them as National Guardsmen off to fight in a war that you didn't have the balls to authorize. If you want us to fight Venezuela, stand on that hill. Stand on it and defend it, but they won't do it.
Yeah, so look, the congressmen are almost never going to represent us. That's why when like 3 of them here
Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Ro Khanna kind of did a rebellion, a revolution within Congress. They were first derided. Of course, they were immediately called anti-Semites.
Sure.
Like what in the world, right? By the way, you're using America First. Now mainstream media has started a campaign to say America First is anti-Semitic because Nick Fuentes uses it. So that's it. No one's allowed to say America First. We're not allowed to say, look, I'm not part of the America First movement, but what do you mean you're not allowed to say America First? What is that? That's insane, right? So, okay, and I say Americans first because I want the voters represented, right? But I don't know if that's been canceled yet. I don't know if America has been canceled yet. So, Dan, what we're asking for is core American principles. For example, in the Venezuela conflict, it's not even a conflict. They're just sitting there. We're just bombing them, right? And sometimes it's not even them. We accidentally bomb Colombian boats and boats from other nations. So again, nonpartisan. When Obama did drone strikes that were extrajudicial killings, and he even killed American citizens, they said, due process doesn't necessarily mean judicial process. That was a terrible precedent to set. And on the Young Turks, we're like, no, don't do that. It's un-American. It opens the door. It's against the Constitution. And now Trump's like, okay, yeah, I get to kill any fisherman I want. You don't even know their names. You have no evidence against them. Doesn't it matter that we follow the law and that we're the good guys and that we follow our own Constitution, Dan?
It should. It absolutely should. And we like to preach this all the time, that the Constitution, the law, it's actually on our side. We just don't know how to use it. We don't know how to use it as the cudgel that it was meant to be. It wasn't meant to be a runaway authority for the federal government that tells us what we're allowed to do. It's the other way around, Cenk. It's us telling the government what they're allowed to do. But because we're such a sleepy society, we don't really pay attention to what's going on. We fall in love with cult of personality instead of actual results. Politicians have flipped that whole thing on its head, and they tell us what we can and can't do, when and where we can go, and what our money is going to be spent on, with no input from us whatsoever. And so, if we ever want to have the true revolution or revoltolution or whatever the verbiage is, and then there's so many different versions of it right now, it's going to take the American people standing up. It's going to take a crazy left person on the left and a crazy right person from the right linking arms and saying, you know what? I don't care if you have a high and tight haircut, and I don't care if you have purple hair. Together, we're Americans. We're Americans, and we're taking back our government. And to hell with these people in Congress. Term limits obviously would be great, but I don't know that that'll ever happen. No legislature or Congress would ever limit their own power. But it's going to take the Americans standing up and saying, you know what? God damn it, enough. We're done with this. And I think that is the only reason that we came home from Afghanistan, is because the Democratic Party, who was in power at the time, Joe Biden, did the right thing by getting us out. He just screwed it up terribly. They had to get out of Afghanistan because whoever was going to be in power one more day with both of those ugly wars still going on was going to pay the ultimate price. We were almost at that tipping point, and they walked us back just for a minute, let us get comfortable, let our mortgage rates come down, let the price of groceries get comfortable again, and then bam, hit us with 2 more wars. It's just the cycle, wash, rinse, repeat. And until we do something about it, it's never going to change.
Yeah, but I think the Epstein files action showed that we can make a difference and that we might be able to do this thing. And I love your idea, so I'm going to come back to that idea in 1 second. First, I want to agree with you on Biden. No question, getting out of Afghanistan was the best thing he did, and I gave him a lot of credit for that. Okay, so number 2, I was talking about like the hippies from the 1960s who were against the Vietnam War. Wouldn't it be beautiful and amazing if the hippies and the veterans got together and said, yeah, that's it, we're done. And by the way, that's actually kind of what happened in the Vietnam War, right?
That's right.
And it got big enough of a movement of actual Americans that it made a difference. And so, and the left and the right both emphasize the Constitution, right? But our politicians never follow it. And so that brings us back to your idea. Because if you follow the Constitution, it is not unclear who should declare war. It is crystal clear. Congress declares war. So if we're going to war, and by the way, bombing boats and killing American citizens abroad like Obama did, etc., and constantly drone striking different countries, those are acts of war. So and we saw, Dan, that 3 people moved 535, right? When they started, they were called radicals and all sorts of terrible names, right? And then by the end, they got the other 532 people to submit, right? And why? Because Ro Khanna and Massey are that strong? No, because they had us behind them, all of us,
united, right? So how do we unite on going back to the Constitution on the war powers?
I think we have to do, I believe in a concept, lift where you stand. Lift where you have the best leverage. And like I said, we went to Washington, D.C. in 2019 to plead our case as veterans. We wanted to go, we took 100 veterans, we raised a little bit of money. We took them all back to Washington, D.C. and we said, we have skin in the game. We've paid the price. We went to war, we know what it's like. And we made our congressmen and senators sit down and look us in the eye in one-on-one meetings, 100 of us. And we made our case for trying for peace, just try for peace. If we have to fight, we're the guys, send us, but let's try for peace. And they all did the same thing. They put their arms around us and took pictures and pointed at the yellow ribbon on the door and said, we support the troops. And then they would politely walk us out and nothing would happen. Except for one congresswoman from Wyoming sat down and looked us dead in the eye and we made our case. And she said, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but as long as I'm here in Washington, D.C., we will never come home from Afghanistan. Never. That was Liz Cheney. So that's when we decided we can't fight in Washington, D.C. anymore. And so we went home and we licked our wounds and we rallied a few people and went to Wyoming and went to every county in Wyoming and got her censured, got the Republican Party to turn their back on her, strip all the funding away from her, helped recruit Harriet Hagman and beat Liz Cheney in the primary by 37 points. So we did it by going back to the states. So now we have this fight, Defend the Guard, where we are in the states because we know we have more leverage there. My senator is Jim Risch, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Do you think that man's gonna pick up the phone if I call him? Not a chance, not a chance. And I know Jim, I've known him a long time. But my state representative, Ted Hill, 38-year Navy captain, longest fighter pilot in Navy history, lives down the street from me. I see him on my way to work. I see him at church. Our kids probably go to the same school. Who do you think I'm more influenced with? Obviously it's with Ted, because you know what? If I called Ted right now, he'd pick up the phone. My state senator, he would pick up the phone. So we went to these people and we appealed to their sense of honor, duty, and their constitutional principles, because the Constitution is clear. Those powers that are not expressly given to the federal government, expressly, it's written, it's delineated, it's very clear. They belong to the states and to the people. And so we've said, let's go back. We're gonna go to the states. We have the presence to do it there, $5,000 in a state, and I can take out 3 sitting representatives. If I want to take out a congressman, you've run for Congress, how much does it cost? How many millions of dollars? It's impossible to fight at that level. But you start taking some hides and removing people from office at the state level, people start to listen. So our first year we ran Defend the Guard, we had to remove 4 or 5 people from one state because they blocked the legislation. And next thing you know, we were in 5 states the next year with sponsors that knew that we were there, we had their back. The next year it was 17. And here we are, we're in our 6th year and we're in over 30 states with sponsors and bills moving through both houses. And so that's where we have the leverage, and that's why you have to fight in the states. Our problem is right now, no deep blue state has even introduced or had a bill sponsor yet. Right now we're fighting in purple states and red states. And we did it under both the Biden administration and the Trump administration. So it's been uniformly a Republican accepted principle because we appeal to their sense of constitutionality. The Democrats, they starting to come around now because they've seen President Trump, that's a Freudian slip. President Trump used the National Guard in Chicago and Portland and LA. And they think that the Defend the Guard movement is a way for them to interfere with Trump's use of the Guard domestically. Well, they're not wrong, but that's not the point of the bill. The point of the bill is to keep the president from being able to take the National Guard from Idaho or Wisconsin and send him over to a war overseas. So that's why we fight in the states. That's where our leverage is at. And that's what we're doing. And we passed the Arizona Senate unanimously with all Republican support 3 times. We passed the Virginia House of Delegates 99-0, full bipartisan support. It was led by conservative Nick Freitas. We're fighting in Maryland right now, which is a deep blue state, but we're fighting from outside of Baltimore. We've got fights going everywhere. And our biggest opposition right now is the war party and Democrats just sitting on their hands. All of the Senate Democrats in Idaho 2 years ago, voted against it, even though we passed with a supermajority through the Idaho Senate. This year, when we're coming back, they're all on board. We've taken the time to educate them. The tables have turned a little bit. They've seen President Trump and they're the no kings party. And so now they want to make sure that they can restrict his use of taking state resources without proper authority. So they get the concept. I don't care if they understand it from my point of view or from any other point of view. If they understand the concept that it's up to us to limit the executive branch's authority, we're all allies now. We're friends. And one last thing, and then I'll close my mouth. You talk about the Vietnam movement and the Democrats being the anti-war party. I live in Idaho, and my Democratic senator in Idaho, Frank Church, was the reason that the Vietnam War ended. Idaho has a proud history, Republican and Democrat, of being an anti-war, kind of a populist nationalist bastion of liberty. And so we're fighting here in Idaho and Montana and states like that, the Western Sagebrush Rebellion states. And that's where our biggest foothold is at. And it's starting to come around. And just with a few more people, maybe some of your listeners and but the progressive left, if they ever come home, they'd see people like Ro Khanna that support us and some other Democrats. And look at Barbara Lee, the only Democrat to vote against the Iraq war resolution. The Democrats are there. They just need the right reason. And I think we're the reason. We're the modern day hippies.
America is a wonderful place because this kind of stuff happens when you have freedom, when you have liberty, right? And so, first of all, Barbara Lee, just a real quick point of correction there, was the only one to vote against the Afghanistan war.
Excuse me, you're right.
Right, but that's okay. Your strategy is so similar to Wolfpack strategy. That's a group I found to get money out of politics. So I'll come back to that in a second. But you mentioned something interesting there. So what would be the effect of this legislation on any president saying, I'm gonna send National Guard into the streets of Portland, Chicago, or anywhere else?
Well, we have to get a little bit into the weeds about this. So the National Guard, there's already a very clear reasons the National Guard can be called into federal service. In the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, the militia clause, it says it's to put down an insurrection, to repel an invasion, or to enforce the laws of the Union. You go further into federal law, and there's a couple of codes, Title 10 and Title 32, that talk about the National Guard or the militia specifically. And one of the express purposes that the National Guard can be called into federal service is to enforce federal law or to put down an insurrection or to suppress a rebellion. These are things that can actually be done, but it requires the president, who is the only person that has the authority, to declare an invasion or to declare a rebellion. And that's part of the law that's missing. And so I love that the country's talking about this right now. The Defend the Guard legislation is not specifically about limiting the domestic use of the National Guard, although the principles are identical. If the president is taking assets from the state, taking sons and daughters, our tradesmen, our part-time citizen soldiers from Idaho to go patrol the streets of Memphis, he should have to do it with proper authority. And those already exist. So Defend the Guard is a state-based bill that aligns with federal law that's being ignored. It actually supports the federal law that's already on the books. And it's interesting that in Title 10 of US Code, Section 10.3.12, I think it is, it says that the National Guard can't be called into federal service to fight overseas wars that have not been declared by Congress. It already says it in the law, but they ignore it. So passing it in the states will give the governor and the legislatures of the states a chance to just hit the brakes for a second and say, you cannot take these people. You can't take them for the purpose that you want them because you don't have the authority. And if 50 states, screw that, if one state did this, one state, it would be a domino effect where they all would jump on board, because there's nothing a governor likes more than to flex a little bit on the national level. Every governor wants to have that final authority, that final control over their state and their assets and their people. And it's just gonna take one. And every legislature says the same thing. We love this idea. We just can't be the first. Well, that's fine. We'll find the first. It's gonna be probably Arizona or Idaho this year. It's gonna pass both houses, and they'll be first. And then watch Katie bar the door. It's gonna be a floodgate and a domino effect.
Yeah, when you say one last question, but first I want to tell people, look, you got to support Dan's effort here. BringOurTroopsHome.us. We got a lot of left-wing veterans that watch TYT. BringOurTroopsHome.us, but you don't have to be a veteran. You just have to care about the Constitution. So Dan is right about that, and the state level thing is the same exact pattern for Wolfpack. We're trying to get money out of politics. We're never going to get 2/3 of Congress to call for a constitutional amendment to ban money in politics, because they got there through money in politics, right? But the Constitution is a beautiful document, and in Article 5, it says you can actually do it through the states. You get 2/3 of the states to call for a convention to propose an amendment, and then 3/4 of the states to ratify. So if you go through the state route, it can work. And Dan, guess what we ran into? We ran into Democratic leadership and Republican leadership, both Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi, eventually started calling state leaders once we got to 5 states. Because for us, if you got to 34 states, you can actually propose an amendment, right? So they're like, no, we don't want that. We love money in politics. So Pelosi defeated us in Maryland, and McConnell called all the red states. But nowadays, Dan, I get the sense that that folks are not listening to Democratic leadership or Republican leadership as much as they used to. That there is a rebellion afoot in the land from both conservatives and
and liberals and progressives, from Democrats and Republican voters, not the politicians, right? But look, we have to follow the law. For the left, we might call it justice for all. For the right, you might call it rule of law. But we all agree there's a reason why we're a country of laws. We have a constitution, we have these laws, and our so-called leaders just won't follow them. So we have to force them to follow them. As we saw in the Epstein case, we can, but only if we're united. So you coming on here to help unite folks makes a huge difference, and I appreciate it, brother. You reaching out makes a difference. And look at this conversation where we give Biden credit on Afghanistan, we criticize Obama on the drone strikes, criticize Trump on the boat strikes, and criticize everybody on every war started in the Middle East, which they all had to do with, right? So let's go, let's unite. So if the last thing is, if there's one thing you want people to do to be able to pass these laws so that we can get back to a constitutional system, back to our legislators following the law, what would it be?
Yeah, you've already brought the website up, bringourtroopshome.us. That's our organization's website. But we also have defendtheguard.us, which is about the legislation specifically. Either one of those websites, go there, enlist in the movement. Put your name, your address, or your email address, and let us start sending you our content so you understand what's happening and when the fight's in your state. That's the first one. Number two, chip in. We are funded by small dollar donors. We only have 3 total paid people in our entire movement, 3 of us. And I'm doing this volunteer, I don't take a dime, and we're running this thing across the country. I need to bring on more people. So chip in a few bucks a month, cup of coffee, 20 bucks here and there. If you're an angel donor, I'll take your money too, but I don't want any corporate money at all. We want individual donors. And then number 3, when it comes time to fight in your state, show up. Show up, and we fill testimony rooms, hearing rooms at state legislatures. When it's time to introduce the bill, we pack the room with veterans, with family members, with spouses of soldiers that have come home and taken their own lives. And when we're in California and we get it proposed, Cenk, I'm gonna ask you, come testify. That's what I would ask of you. Help fill the room. We are a movement of the people. This is a very, very pro-people, pro-American first. I love the way you said that, and I'm gonna start using it. I hope you don't mind. This is something we have to do to take back our country, because all the things that people are watching the news about and fighting about on social media, cost of homes, social welfare, social programs, all those things are secondary to the most important issue that we're facing today. And that's the survival of our country, keeping it from becoming an empire, and stop killing people all around the world in the name of democracy. If we can't get that right, it doesn't matter what the tax code is.
Yeah, 100%, and I would love to help in California, certainly accepted. And we're gonna bring the Dan McKnights and the Ben Cohns of the world together. Ben Cohn is one of the founders of Ben and Cherries, about the most anti-war guy you'll find in the country. Right. If we can unite Vermont and Idaho, you know what we're gonna get? We're gonna get America.
A movement.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's nothing the establishment hates more than when the left and right unite.
Love it. All right, everybody, Dan McKnight, Defend the Guard, and bringourtroopshome.us. Dan, thank you, brother. Thank you for being a true American and for fighting for the Constitution.
Appreciate you.
All right. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.